I'm not exaggerating, but joining the pirate group is the busiest time of my life. Sometimes, I can't even rest for a few days." The young man quickly comforted the old scholar in front of him. Song Su shook his head. "Sir, I am not complaining to you, nor am I asking for credit. In terms of memory crystals, it is difficult for me to make any new progress. To be honest, being able to restore the array used by soul crystals is already something that makes me feel accomplished. In the field of alchemy, my poor magic talent can only bring me very little help. At present, the Justice Pirates had an alchemy device that could make memory crystals. It was the one that ZD once gave to Jun Jin to use. But no matter how Song Su tried, he could not use this device to forcibly extract the target's memory. Song Su made a lot of murlocs. Out of 100 murlocs, only a single digit succeeded. But the memories contained in the memory crystals were very fragmented and did not match at all, so there was no reference value at all. And the murlocs who were successfully forced to succeed also ended up very miserable. They either went crazy or their brains exploded and they died. To sum it up, this memory crystal manufacturing device could only allow the willing user to successfully and safely make valuable memory crystals. "I'm sorry, sir," Song Su said apologetically. "We can't use this method to interrogate the Murloc's language, the Dochi techniques used by Murlocs, and the information about the Murloc's forces in the Eye of the Sea. No need, I can already speak the Murloc's language." The teenager pressed this sentence into his stomach, and on the surface, he also sighed. "There are too many gaps in the information. I think, rather than an alchemist, we need a powerful thief who can bring abundant information. In the battle just now, there was a traitor among the Murlocs. Without the surprise attack of the brown-scaled Murlocs, we couldn't have won so easily. Unfortunately, we didn't keep the brown-scaled Murlocs. But from this point, it can be seen that the forces in the Eye of Tianju are mixed, and there are many contradictions between them. As outsiders, if we have sufficient and reliable information, we can make ends meet between these forces." "What a pity." The teenager sighed. "Yes, everything happened too fast." Song Su sighed. The teenager continued. "In this way, I can only take the deep-sea monster fish and dive into the sea alone to investigate. Captain, isn't this a bit risky? At least find 1 or 2 silver transcendents by your side." Before Song Su could finish, he was interrupted by the teenager. "There's no need to waste precious military power. Even if they come to help me, their help is limited at the bottom of the sea. The deep-sea monster fish and the tower spirit are my biggest help. These days, you should consume the Murlocs as soon as possible and make soul crystals. I need to use the ship, and there's not much time left before the Tianju rises." Song Su nodded. "Understood, sir." The teenager didn't disclose that the brown-scaled Murlocs were his secret. If he used the excuse of being a beast man, he could actually convince others. But there was no need for that. It was unnecessary to say it. A few days later, the teenager handed the fleet over to Song Su and Zhongge. He announced to the public that he was going to cultivate in seclusion, but in fact, he took the deep-sea monster fish and went deep into the Eye of the Sea. In a trench, he hid the deep-sea monster fish, turned into a Murloc, and swam out alone. According to the plan, he coincidentally encountered a Murloc caravan that the deep-sea monster fish had investigated. The teenager blocked the caravan's path. The leader of the caravan was also a brown-scaled Murloc. He looked very old, and his eyes didn't seem very bright. When the old brown-scaled Murloc saw the teenager, he was shocked. "Grom, Walrel, little brother from the Murloc race. What's your name? Amazing. Did you kill these iron-skinned batfish?" Beside the young Murloc lay the corpses of 2 black iron-level batfish. This was the entrance plan that the teenager had designed for himself. "WM Jolom Wagrel. Of course I killed them. My name is Horan," the teenager said calmly. At the same time, he turned his wrist and played with the black iron-level scimitar in his hand. The old Murloc's pupils constricted, and he opened his mouth wide, revealing his broken teeth, and laughed. "MWWL, WWMJRR. Gulmema. Brother Horan is so powerful at such a young age. It's really delightful. Do you want to sell your prey?" The young Murloc thought for a moment, then agreed to the old Murloc and decided to sell the two iron-skinned batfish corpses. He took the opportunity to ask the old Murloc where they were going. The old Murloc said the name of a Murloc town, and the young Murloc tilted his head and thought for a moment. Naturally, he expressed that he was a little tired from his hard work, so he might as well follow the old Murloc and the others to the Murloc town. The old Murloc hesitated for a moment, but still nodded and agreed to the teenager's request. Chapter 291. The young Murloc finally sneaked into the Murloc town through the caravan. He looked calm and collected, but in fact, he was carefully observing the surroundings with the Murloc's huge eyes. Although there were many Murlocs in the Murloc town, the facilities were very simple. Most of the houses where the Murlocs lived were small caves dug out or natural gaps in the coral bushes. The roofs and windows of the houses were all made of shells of various sizes. The fixing method between the building structures was usually tied with seaweed. There were also some large underwater caves where many Murlocs lived together. The overall degree of construction was very low, just a little better than that of the primitive tribes. Although it looked so backward from a military point of view, it was a strong and durable defense facility. Fighting in the sea was between land and air, and the combat environment was more complicated. The enemy could swim and float above their heads for a long time. Therefore, not only in all directions, but also above their heads and under their feet could be the enemy's attack route. In this environment, the Inkstone Cave could provide the Murlocs with tight and comprehensive protection. The passages between the caves were mostly narrow and slippery, and the terrain was complicated. Only the Murlocs who lived here for a long time could be familiar with the terrain. The Murlocs' hands and feet had the ability to absorb, and they were good at swimming, so they could move quickly in the passage. Fighting here, the Murlocs had a great advantage. Every Murloc town was relatively easy to defend and difficult to attack. At present, the Justice Pirates have thousands of people, but they can't attack such an underwater Murloc town. The Murlocs here are about the same size as the pirates. Most of the pirates are ordinary people, and they can't go deep into the sea. The water pressure can kill them. Even if magic is used to offset the water pressure and temporarily give the pirates the ability to breathe underwater, these ordinary pirates can't fight in an environment where there is water everywhere. Doing this will make the pirates sacrifice themselves, and at the same time, waste the precious magic of the mages on our side. The young man remembered that he had discussed this matter with Zhonggu before, how to effectively attack a Murloc town at the bottom of the sea. Zhongji's suggestion was to launch a surprise attack with elite troops. Send an elite team of extraordinary people composed of bronze, black iron, and silver, and with the help of magic, temporarily have the ability to fight underwater. After that, they would launch a surprise attack and charge forward in a short period of time, breaking through the merfolk's defensive line and swiftly beheading the leader of the merfolk. This would cause the merfolk's morale to crumble, and they would take advantage of the victory to pursue and kill. At the same time, Zhonggu also mentioned a few key points that required special attention. First, they had to hide their troops well before the surprise attack. If the information was leaked and the fishmen moved ahead of time, it would be terrible. The humans couldn't catch up even if they wanted to. When it came to swimming underwater, they were no match for the Murlocs. This was the innate difference between different races. If the Murlocs kept running away, then it would be almost impossible to recover the cost that they had invested in the war. The Murloc villages were all very simple and crude, and there were very few valuable things. It would be even more dangerous if the Murlocs were to walk and stop and keep the human troops in suspense. The spells cast by the human extraordinaires had a time limit. If the merfolk chose to attack when the spell was about to expire, the human team would definitely be in danger. Secondly, if the Murlocs did not have time to escape and put up a stubborn resistance. If the human troop failed in their surprise attack, they would have to try their best to avoid fighting against these mermaids and mermen. Because if this went on, the human troops would lose extraordinaires, and the Murlocs would only sacrifice ordinary Murlocs. This kind of exchange of troops unless it was to achieve a very important tactic or strategy, would be very unprofitable. Attacking the undersea settlement of the Murlocs was almost impossible for the Justice Pirates. The risk of a war was too great to forcibly attack. Therefore, after the young Murloc entered the village and observed for a while, he was even more glad that he had a blood core and could mutate and disguise himself as a Murloc. I also have to thank the wise Murloc. Without his blood, I wouldn't be able to understand the Murloc language. What good Murloc? The caravan entered the town, and the commotion caused by it attracted more and more Murlocs. They came out of their caves and looked at the caravan of Murlocs. Welcome home. Soon, the Murlocs automatically opened a path, and an old Murloc shaman came out of the crowd. She was holding a cane, her back was stooped, and her fish whiskers were drooping. At first glance, the young Murloc thought it was an old Murloc grandpa. But when the Murloc spoke, he found that it was a female voice, and only then did he understand the old Murloc's gender. Speaking of which, the gender of Murlocs was not obvious. Although there were males and females, it was difficult for outsiders to distinguish. It was the same for the young Murloc. Stand still. The leader of the caravan, the old Murloc, roared. The people of the caravan stood together. The old Murloc was also among them. The old Murloc shaman began to chant, and then cast a spell. For a moment, the seawater was shining. The blood-like light shone on all the members of the caravan, and until the light gradually extinguished, nothing special happened. This was obviously a detection method. The old Murloc shaman saw this result and breathed a sigh of relief, saying again, "Welcome home, children. You've worked hard along the way." The young Murloc relaxed a little. The leader of the caravan also breathed a sigh of relief. He had been paying attention to the young Murloc just now, and now he patted the latter's shoulder. "You're not from the Bladefin tribe, so we can all rest assured." The young Murloc shrugged. "I told you, I'm a wandering hunter." The old Murloc said, "If it weren't for the fact that you and I are both brown scales, I wouldn't have brought you along. But this is not safe. The Bladefin tribe is our enemy, and they once sent Murlocs to infiltrate our town. Murlocs were intelligent species, and the old Murloc's words indicated that there were conflicts among the Murlocs. At the same time, they valued intelligence in competition and had spy tactics. This made the young Murloc remember that when he had asked to join the caravan, the old Murloc had indeed hesitated for a while. So the young Murloc continued to explain, "I just want to find a safe place to rest for a few days, and I'll leave in a few days." Hearing this, the other Murlocs relaxed a little, but the old Murloc had a new idea. He led the young Murloc and arranged his residence, and then secretly called his disciple. His disciple was a green-scaled Murloc with a pair of big yellow eyes. Sauerkraut. The old Murloc patted his disciple's sturdy back. "I have a mission for you. Go and challenge that newcomer." Sauerkraut was very respectful to the old Murloc. "Understood, master. How much do you want me to teach him?" The old Murloc said seriously, "I don't want you to bully the outsider, but you have to test his strength. If he's weak, then you have to restrain yourself." "Oh, I understand, master." The old Murloc looked at his silly disciple and was a little worried. He said, "Be careful of his scimitar. He can kill 2 iron batfish at once. He's not easy to deal with." "Yes, master." Sauerkraut had always carried out his master's orders to the best of his ability. So, he went to find the young Murloc immediately. "You want to challenge me?" The young Murloc sized up the green-scaled, yellow-eyed Murloc in front of him. Compared to the other Murlocs, he was obviously stronger and taller, and the muscles on his legs were more obvious. He was also dark iron level. "I heard that your scimitar is very powerful. I'm Master's only disciple, and I've inherited Master's sword skills. The other Murloc fighters in the town are no match for me. So this time, I'm here to officially challenge you. Do you dare to accept?" Sauerkraut shouted. He deliberately raised his voice to attract the other Murloc's attention. Of course, the young Murloc immediately agreed. This test was within his expectations. The Murloc's living conditions were backward, and they lived under the sea. There were many predators that threatened the Murloc, so they were all martial artists. If they weren't, they wouldn't be able to survive. There was nothing wrong with Sauerkraut challenging Huiyun, who was also dark iron level. In fact, if he didn't accept the challenge, the other Murloc would be eager to challenge him. However, Sauerkraut was recognized as the strongest among the young adult Murloc. When the news of him officially challenging Huiyun spread, the other Murloc chose to watch from the sidelines. That afternoon, the location of the young Murloc and Sauerkraut's duel was already crowded with Murloc. The young Murloc arrived on time, and the surrounding Murlocs stared at him, making way for him. He's Huiyun. He's dark iron at such a young age? Just like the rumors, he's a genius like Sauerkraut. Sauerkraut has the bloodline of the barbarian fish tribe, and he looks like a brown scale. How can he reach dark iron at such a young age? The Murloc were discussing, and they were very curious. When a young Murloc passed through the crowd and arrived at the center of the arena, Sauerkraut, who had arrived early, stood up, picked up the scimitar on the ground, and held it tightly in his hands. He used 2 scimitars, and it was a dual blade style. Come, I'll let you attack first. Sauerkraut bared his teeth and purposely clashed the 2 scimitars together, making a loud noise. The young Murloc flipped his wrist and twirled the scimitars around, causing the other Murloc to exclaim in surprise. Sauerkraut was unhappy and snorted, "Fancy." Even so, he stared at the scimitars in the young Murloc's hands, and his gaze was very serious. This was because the young Murloc's scimitar had reached dark iron, and this kind of weapon was rare in the Murloc settlement. The leader of the caravan, Old Brown Scale, was also dark iron, but after working hard for his entire life, he only had 2 bronze-level scimitars. Sauerkraut himself only had normal scimitars, and the pair of bronze-level scimitars in his hands were specially lent to him by his master, Old Brown Scale. His master usually treasured the pair of bronze-level scimitars, so this was the first time Sauerkraut used them openly. Sauerkraut was excited and nervous. I wonder if master's treasures can withstand the dark iron-level scimitars? The young Murloc twirled his scimitars around and slowly approached Sauerkraut. Sauerkraut was very cautious. He held the scimitars in front of his chest, bent his back, and constantly moved his feet. Suddenly, the young Murloc pounced forward. The surrounding Murloc thought that both sides would have to fight for a while and did not expect a sudden attack, and they all exclaimed in surprise. In the midst of the crowd's exclamations, the young Murloc pounced in front of Sauerkraut in the blink of an eye. Sauerkraut had been prepared, and he was not surprised. He calmly raised his scimitars and wanted to block the young Murloc's attack. The young Murloc suddenly changed his movements, and he threw the scimitars like flying scimitars and threw them with force. Sauerkraut was extremely shocked. Such a good weapon, and you just threw it away. Chapter 292. This attack caught him off guard. He was stunned for a moment, but when he reacted, he quickly blocked with both of his swords, knocking the black iron scimitar away. Great! He has lost his weapon. Just as Sauerkraut was about to rejoice, the young merman had already seized the opportunity he could create. His whole body crashed into Sauerkraut's chest. Sauerkraut instantly felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if a tiger shark had crashed into him. He couldn't help but open his mouth and spit out a lot of bubbles. So much strength. Sauerkraut was shocked. It was rare for a brown-scaled merman to have such a strong impact. Sauerkraut often sparred with his master, and in his impression, even his master didn't have such great strength. If I was knocked down, wouldn't that be too embarrassing? Sauerkraut quickly propped up his chest, his legs firmly planted on the seabed, and retreated 3 to 4 steps, forcing himself not to be knocked down. As he retreated, he struck down with both of his arms, attempting to hit the young merman's back with the scimitar hilt. Because his master had instructed him, he only used the scimitar hilt and didn't reverse the blade. At the same time, his target wasn't the young merman's eyes, but his back. Fall! Sauerkraut shouted. Although he held back, he was very sure that as long as his attack hit his opponent, he would definitely make him fall to the ground, unable to get up. But the young merman didn't even look. He directly raised both of his hands and held Sauerkraut's elbows. This action was very clever. If the young merman wanted to hold Sauerkraut's forearms, he would have to bear a lot of force, and with the brown scale merman's strength, he would probably fail. If the young merman held his elbows, it would be easier. According to the principle of leverage, the force he would bear would be much smaller, and the parry would be successful. But it was useless, because as long as Sauerkraut moved his elbows, his forearms would still carry the bronze scimitar and smash it onto the young merman's body. So, when a young merman held Sauerkraut's elbows, Sauerkraut was stunned and couldn't use his strength. Many of the surrounding merman warriors also had a slight change in expression. The layman watched for the show, while the expert watched for the skill. Although it was just a small action, it was enough to let the merman warriors realize that the young merman was very skilled. After the young Murloc held Pickled Cabbage's elbow, he seized the opportunity to pursue and attack. He flipped his palm and grabbed Pickled Cabbage's elbow tightly. Sauerkraut clenched her teeth in anger. "You want to compete with me in terms of strength?" Just as he was about to use all his strength to overwhelm the young Murloc suddenly stomped his feet on the ground, and his fish head hit Sauerkraut's chin hard. Pickled Cabbage was knocked backward, and she felt dizzy. A sharp pain traveled from her chin, but Sauerkraut gritted her teeth and did not cry out. "Wouldn't it be embarrassing if I cried out in pain?" Sauerkraut was furious. "Damn it, it hurts. I'll teach you a lesson." But in the next moment, the young Murloc lifted his leg and kicked up fiercely. Bang! Pickled Cabbage's crotch was hit squarely. Pickled Cabbage's body and mind shook violently. He could no longer feel the anger in his heart. The intense pain caused him to cry out involuntarily. For a moment, Sauerkraut forgot to resist, and its body subconsciously shrank back. But he forgot that his elbow was firmly controlled by Run. The young Murloc grabbed Sauerkraut's elbows tightly, and his legs are like windmills, constantly using his calves or knees to hit Sauerkraut's crotch. Bang, bang, bang. The terrifying continuous attacks made all the male Murlocs' scalp tingle. In a short period of time, Sauerkraut's cry of pain turned into a scream, and then from a scream to a whimper. Sauerkraut fell to the ground miserably. The young Murloc did not let him go, and used his feet to stomp on him a few times. Sauerkraut curled up into a lobster and covered his crotch with all his might, while his mouth kept sucking in seawater. "I've won!" The young Murloc raised his arm and shouted loudly. Then he panted heavily, as he had exercised very vigorously just now. The whole place was dead silent, and only the young Murloc's victory declaration could be heard. The young Murloc walked towards his scimitar, which was stabbed into the sand at the bottom of the sea. The young Murloc successfully retrieved it. The Murloc near the black iron scimitar took a few steps back decisively, and cautiously distanced himself from the young Murloc. Many of the male Murloc rushed to their crotches, and felt a chill, as if a cold current had suddenly rushed between their legs. The young Murloc held the scimitar and returned to Sauerkraut's front. He flipped his wrist and played with the scimitar a few times. Sauerkraut looked at the scimitar and felt wronged. He was furious, and he remembered his master's words, "Be careful of his scimitar." Despicable. Sauerkraut fell to the ground and gritted his teeth. The next moment, the young Murloc walked past him, who was lying on the ground, and bent down to pick up Sauerkraut's 2 bronze scimitars. "What are you doing?" Sauerkraut shouted. Seeing the scimitars fall into the young Murloc's hands, he became anxious. He wanted to get up, but his crotch was in extreme pain, and his face was obviously pale under the thick scales. Sauerkraut tried his best, but he could not stand up. The pain in his crotch was heart-wrenching. The young Murloc successfully picked up the 2 bronze scimitars and announced loudly, "These are my spoils of war. Put them down. This is a battle between warriors, and you are robbing me." Sauerkraut shouted, "You came to challenge me, and I spared your life. I only took your weapons, and that's already considered letting you go. Don't you want to live anymore?" The young Murloc humphed coldly, and a cold, murderous aura was emitted. The Murloc were provoked by the murderous aura and started to clamor. "Outsider, you are too arrogant. You dare to kill people in our town. You are asking for death." This is a battle between warriors. Sauerkraut obviously held back just now, and only hit your back with the scimitar hilt. Although I didn't hit you, so noisy all of you, the young Murloc raised his head and shouted. He was not afraid at all, and was full of wildness. He indeed had the ability to be fearless. He had silver battle chi, and at the same time, he was in his Dragon Man form. Relying on the defensive power of the dragon scales, he could defend against gold battle skills. It would not be a problem for him to fight his way out of the encirclement of these Murloc. The only problem was that there was only one silver-level Murloc shaman in the town. However, the young Murloc had another trump card, deep-sea monster fish, which was hidden, could come to support them at any time. Everyone calmed down. The leader of the caravan, Old Brown Scale, could not sit still anymore. He sent Sauerkraut to challenge Shuang Ran just to see his strength, so that it would be easier to recruit him. If there was a conflict because of this, it was not his intention at all. After this battle, Old Brown Scale liked Shuang Ran even more, and his desire to recruit him was even stronger. Immediately, he stepped out from the crowd and gently waved his hand, calming down the agitated Murloc onlookers, showing his prestige in the town. Then, Old Brown Scale turned to the young Murloc and said with a smile, Sauerkraut is my disciple. He was not as good as you, and lost to you. There is nothing wrong with you taking these 2 scimitars as your spoils of war. If you like them, you can take them. Master, Sauerkraut was shocked and could not care less about the pain. These 2 scimitars are your life's treasures. They are indeed my treasures, but unfortunately, you lost. The opponent obviously held back. Old Brown Scale sighed deliberately. Master, Sauerkraut Murloc's eyes were bloodshot, and he wanted to cry. I swear, in the future, I will compensate you with 2 brand new bronze scimitars. No, black iron. I will definitely get 2 black iron scimitars for you. That's more like it. The young Murloc pursed his lips deliberately and tried to make a proud expression. Fortunately, he had been mutating into a Murloc recently, or else it would be difficult to make such an expression. His expression immediately made the surrounding Murloc feel disgusted, and they wanted to beat the young Murloc up, especially Sauerkraut. He was gnashing his teeth in hatred. But Old Brown Scale pointed at the young Murloc and purposely shook his head. More like it? No, you're still far from it. Hey, what do you mean? Are you still not satisfied? The young Murloc purposely shouted unhappily. Old Brown Scale saw the young Murloc was hooked and laughed. You are a single-blade fighter, right? Do you really know how to use 2 blades? You have a total of 3 blades now. Can you use all of them? The young Murloc pursed his lips. I can't use all of them, and I am used to using 1 blade. But I can sell them for money. Do you want to buy them? Just tell me directly. As long as the price is right, I will sell them to you on the spot. Sauerkraut was so angry that his eyes turned black. This was his master's blade, and he wanted his master to buy it. This was too abominable. Old Brown Scale nodded without hesitation. I will buy them, but I won't pay you for it. Are you trying to make fun of me? Of course not. What I will pay you is something more valuable than money. For example, my blade skills or fighting skills. Old Brown Scale's words were shocking. He stared at the young Murloc's face with a penetrating gaze. If I am not wrong, you have not learned how to use a blade properly, and you don't have any fighting skills. Sauerkraut's heart skipped a beat, and he agreed with this guess. Of course not. If he did, why would he throw the blade directly? The young Murloc pursed his lips, and he looked as if he was saying, although you guessed right, I will not admit it, and I will still be stubborn. Humph, of course I have fighting skills, but I am afraid of killing people, so I don't use them. If I really use them, you will be collecting your disciple's corpse. Sauerkraut felt as if his heart was stabbed by a flying blade. Old Brown Scale laughed and did not refute the young Murloc's words. I can teach you how to use a blade, and at the same time teach you fighting skills. I will use these to buy this pair of bronze curved blades. What do you think? Master, Sauerkraut exclaimed. The other Murlocs were also shocked. They could hear that Old Brown Scale thought highly of this young Murloc and wanted to promote him. Let me think about it. The young Murloc deliberately hesitated. Sauerkraut was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. Thinking back, I have suffered so much in order to be apprenticed to my master. I spent so much effort, risked my life, and dug up a big bowl of pearls as a gift to him. I even knelt in front of his door for 3 days and 3 nights before my master was moved. Now, there is such a good thing, and you still want to consider it. Hey, don't tell me you purposely taught me the wrong things to harm me. After all, he is your disciple, and this is your blade. The young Murloc shouted. My master is not this kind of person. You dare to slander my mastery. Sauerkraut was so angry that his eyes were round and bloodshot. He wanted to bite the young Murloc into pieces. Old Brown Scale raised his hand to stop Sauerkraut's scolding. The young Murloc's suspicion made him feel that this wild, wandering Murloc was not shrewd at all. He laughed. He is indeed my disciple, and this is indeed my blade. But I will not teach you the wrong things, and I hope that the two of you can have a real battle in the future, with outstanding blade skills and wonderful fighting skills. Don't you want to? The young Murloc was stunned and revealed a look of longing. Hey, the young man took the bait. Old Brown Scale sharply noticed the young man's expression and was happy. Seeing Old Brown Scale's slightly raised lips, the young Murloc was also happy. This old man took the bait. Chapter 293. The light from the corals shone on the seabed, illuminating the path ahead. The leader of the caravan, Old Brown Scale, was walking side by side with the mayor, Old Mermaid Shaman. It's been 2 days. How's that guy doing? The mermaid shaman, with a hunched back, asked while walking with a walking stick. Oh, he's been practicing red scale flurry. Old Brown Scale smiled. Old Mermaid Shaman looked at Old Brown Scale in surprise. You taught him your trump card combat skill, just like that. I think you taught Sauerkraut this combat skill after teaching him for 6 years. You even set up a difficult test before teaching him. Sauerkraut went through a lot of hardships to complete the test. He came back with serious injuries many times. I had to save his life. Old Brown Scale nodded. This sword skill is very precious. How could Sauerkraut know how to cherish it without setting up a test? Of course, the main reason is that this sword skill itself has a huge flaw. It came from a fire elemental elder. He was a fire elemental drool who explored all over the world. He was accidentally saved by my ancestor when he was exploring an underwater volcano. In order to repay my ancestor for saving his life, this druid imparted his sword skill to me. Of course, this sword skill is suitable for fire elemental, not for us mermaids. My family has been practicing this sword skill for generations and slowly improved it. That's how I got red scale flurry. Although red scale flurry has been improved by generations of mermaids, it still has a huge flaw. If it's maintained for a long time, the user's body temperature will increase rapidly. If you don't stop in time and insist on using it, the user's blood will boil and be cooked by this sword skill. By then, all the fish scales on the user's body will be roasted red. In the later stage of using this sword skill, the user's muscles, bones, and brain will be affected by the high temperature, causing our movements to change drastically. If you want to wield your sword in a straight line, the actual attack path will become very distorted. Because of these 2 points, it's called red scale flurry. Hearing Old Brown Scale's detailed and honest explanation, the Murloc shaman finally understood. No wonder you set up such a test for Sauerkraut. So they wanted to use this test to train Sauerkraut's ability, so that he would have the strength to overcome the drawbacks of the dance of the red scales. The old man laughed. Yes, it is very difficult to cultivate such a sword skill. It'll take at least 2 to 3 months to master it. Back then, it took me 1.5 months. Currently, he is doing basic exercises using a saber to chop the seabed rocks. As a matter of fact, the content of this training will go through the entire sword skill cultivation. Even if it's me, every once in a while, I'll chop some rocks to maintain my standards. We're almost there. Many seabed rocks appeared in front of them. Most of the rocks were yellow in color, with white rocks interspersed in between. This was an underwater quarry not far from the Murloc village. To the fishmen, this was a very important resource point. This was because the tools that the Murlocs used daily were basically all stone tools. Even weapons and equipment were mostly made of stone. The light in the quarry was dim, and there were not many corals as a source of light. The water flow was gentle, and there were hardly any turbulent undercurrents. The Murloc shaman and the old man walked into the quarry. The Murloc shaman looked at the ground with her blurry old eyes and found 2 pairs of Murloc footprints. Sauerkraut is here too? The old man smiled. I asked Sauerkraut to come here and demonstrate the dance of the red scales to Sauerkraut, but I told Sauerkraut not to give any instructions other than that. The Murloc shaman was slightly stunned, and then she chuckled. As expected of you, old man, she understood the beauty of this move after thinking about it for a while. On the one hand, it was to show Sauerkraut the power of the dance of the red scales after mastering it, which strongly attracted Sauerkraut to continue learning. On the other hand, when Sauerkraut was practicing, he purposely showed a more powerful attack effect so that he would be a stark contrast to Sauerkraut. There would be a gap between them, which would make Sauerkraut lower his head and choose to learn from the old man. On the other hand, didn't Sauerkraut defeat Sauerkraut in the challenge? At this time, Sauerkraut showed his strength so that Sauerkraut would stop underestimating him and destroy his pride as a victor, so that Sauerkraut could manage him in the future. After receiving the Murloc shaman's praise, the old man sighed deeply. Sigh. I'm old. I hope that I can do more for the town while I'm still alive. If Sauerkraut stays in the town, we'll have one more black iron warrior. He learned my fighting skills again. In the future, when Sauerkraut inherits my position, he can be Sauerkraut's assistant and help him share the burden. But it's a pity that both of them don't have good bloodlines, so they're at most black iron warriors. If we had a silver warrior in the past, Blade Fin Town wouldn't have. Forget it. Let's not talk about the past. The Murloc shaman sighed faintly and interrupted the old man. The 2 of them went deep into the quarry. A stone with a few knife marks on the surface came into their sight. The 2 of them stopped to look, and the old man laughed. This should be the result of Sauerkraut. Look, there are only 5 knife marks on the stone. He didn't make the 6th cut, but this is the first time I feel the difficulty of this skill. It's hard for beginners to maintain Dance of the Red Scales because it requires them to multitask. On one hand, they have to maintain the flow of their fighting power, and, on the other hand, they have to control the trajectory of their attacks. The flow of fighting power is very complicated, and it requires a lot of practice until it becomes instinct. Only then can they use Dance of the Red Scales for a long time. The old man's tone had a hint of pride. Stroking the knife marks on the surface of the stone, he reminisced, back then, when I first learned, I worked hard without sleep or rest for 3 days and 3 nights. Only then did I manage to leave more than 10 knife marks on the stone at once. The 2 of them continued forward. The carved knife marks on the stone were the best way to lead the way. After a dozen of such stones, the old man's expression changed, and he exclaimed in surprise. The old Murloc shaman looked at the stone and saw that the number of knife marks on the stone had exceeded 10 and directly increased to 15. The old man was a little embarrassed. Haha, looks like Sauerkraut is really talented. My eyesight is very good. I'm very happy that he got started so quickly. But the hard part is yet to come. To really master it, you have to be able to split the stone with every attack. Back then, it took me 7 days to reach this step. But this result is already very good, and my father praised me greatly. Sauerkraut only leaves knife marks. It's still a long way to go. The old man shook his head. The 2 of them walked for a while, and the old man's expression changed again. He found a huge stone that had been split open. Pieces of gravel, which were obviously cut off by the knife, were scattered around the huge stone. The old man was surprised and confused. From the side of the gravel that was cut off, he could infer the trajectory of the knife. This was obviously not Sauerkraut's knife, and the trajectory of the knife was the same as the previous knife marks. Could it be that Sauerkraut could split the stone? My God, how long has it been? The old man exclaimed in his heart. The old Murloc shaman looked at him with a smile. This should be the result of Sauerkraut, right? Most of this stone hasn't been split open, and I know Sauerkraut can split the stone into small pieces. The old man coughed. Not bad. Not bad, this sauerkraut is a bit out of my expectation. He mastered this sword skill, and his speed is faster than mine. But it's not a big deal. He hasn't broken my grandpa's record. The old man tried to maintain his dignity as a senior. He smiled and pointed at the stone that had been split in half. He didn't continue to split it. He must have lost control. Look, although the last few attacks were getting more powerful, the direction has changed. This means that he can't control the speed anymore. Although he has grasped the basics of this sword skill, at the same time, he also felt the biggest difficulty in cultivating this sword skill. Although I wasn't here at that time, I can imagine this kid frowning and thinking hard. Next, he'll definitely ask Sauerkraut for advice. Sauerkraut will show how he really mastered the red scale dance. He'll feel the difference. At the same time, he'll feel lucky that he took the initiative and didn't let Sauerkraut show his true strength. The two old Murlocs continued walking. Along the way, they found more and more stone fragments. The old man stopped and pointed at the stone. This is from Sauerkraut. I'm very familiar with his sword skills. I know it's him. The one next to it should be from Sauerkraut. The difference is obvious. The old shaman nodded. The giant stone that Sauerkraut had split was only the bottom of a stool. More than half of the stone that Sauerkraut had split was left. They walked a few more steps. The two found a second pair of giant stones that had been split. They could tell who had done it at a glance. The old man laughed. The fish can't escape the hook. They're competing. I know Sauerkraut well. He's unruly and wild. He lost the first time. He'll definitely be unhappy. He'll definitely drag Sauerkraut to compete the second and third time. He'll lose miserably. He'll clearly know how powerful Sauerkraut is. Sure enough, the next few pairs of giant stones were the most direct evidence. They verified the old man's guess. Sauerkraut didn't stop at one place, because they had to choose the giant stones that were suitable for the competition. They kept going deeper and deeper. The two old Murlocs followed their footprints all the way. Every time, Sauerkraut lost the competition, but the old man's face gradually changed. He found that the gap between the two was shrinking, and it was shrinking faster and faster. This discovery shocked him. There was no doubt that Sauerkraut's speed of improvement had exceeded all the records he knew. Finally, they saw Sauerkraut. Sauerkraut stood in a daze in the middle of a pile of rubble. She was as still as a statue. Sauerkraut didn't react until the old man called him 3 times. He looked at the old man in a daze. Master, am I stupid? Chapter 294. Just now, the Murloc Sauerkraut witnessed with his own eyes how Ran progressed from a beginner to a master, then to a triumphant progress. In the end, Ran was on par with him, and even surpassed him slightly. Such progress had a strong impact on Sauerkraut's worldview. His originally firm and stable posture was now on the verge of collapse. Seeing the opposite of his plan, Old Brown Scale was shocked and helpless. He quickly patted his beloved disciple's shoulder. Of course you're not stupid, he added in his heart. If you're stupid, then I'm the stupidest of the stupidest. Then what's going on? Master, do you believe it? This is a Murloc in a day. No, half a day, no, that's not right either. He did it in less than half a day. Sauerkraut pointed at the broken rocks on the ground, his voice trembling slightly. How would I know what's going on? What the hell? Old Brown Scale shouted in his heart, but he forced himself to be calm and asked, maybe he's special. Where is he now? In front. He should still be practicing to split rocks. Sauerkraut replied mechanically. After so many slashes, his body temperature must be very high. His blood must be boiling. We have to go there quickly. Old Brown Scale analyzed deliberately. The old Murloc shaman immediately understood what he meant. Old Brown Scale invited her, the mayor, to help Ran practice the red scale flurry. The old shaman's spell could quickly lower body temperature and heal the hidden injuries caused by the practice. The potential of the Murloc race could not be compared to the human race. Iron-level humans were not rare, but among the Murloc race, there were very few iron-level extraordinaires, so they were valued more. The old shaman was a silver-level spellcaster. Helping Ran with his practice was also a favor. It was a bargaining chip to recruit Horan in the future. Along the way, Horan's talent had greatly exceeded the two old Murlocs' expectations. This made the two of them even more eager to recruit him. Let's go. The old shaman immediately moved. Old Brown Scale also left Sauerkraut where he was. Hey, please wait for me. Sauerkraut reacted after a while. He quickly swam a few times to catch up with the two elders. Then he changed his posture, stepped on the bottom of the sea, and changed from swimming to walking. After walking for a short distance, the three of them realized that they were on the move. The young Murloc was waving the spoils of war that he had obtained a few days ago, the pair of bronze-rank scimitars. The scimitar slashed rapidly, and with every slash, it would split open a piece of rock. The scales all over the young Murloc's body were faintly red as he had been maintaining the crimson scale flurry for a long time. Stop, stop! Old Brown Scale hurriedly shouted. He rushed to the side. You will hurt yourself like this. Didn't I already take care of you? You can't practice this sword skill carelessly. You need to rest more and take care of yourself. Old Brown Scale was very concerned, but at the same time, he was secretly shocked. He thought of his youth and couldn't help but ask himself, back then, if I had the same perseverance as him, would I have been able to persevere in practicing the saber? Absolutely not. He knew all too well how much pain the fishmen could feel when their scales were faintly red after using Red Scale Flurry. This wild brat's willpower is so strong. It's like he's made of steel. Seeing that Old Brown Scale was stopping him, the young merman could only stop practicing. He felt somewhat regretful. After he defeated Sauerkraut, he wanted to test the limits of his body, but he was stopped by Old Brown Scale. He wasn't worried about the harm it would bring. Fishmen couldn't recover fast, but Dragon Men could. He could completely transform into Dragon Man form and accelerate the recovery of his injuries. Even if he couldn't recover, there were plenty of healing potions on the Justice ship. Not to mention, he had a superb healing method, the Sapphire Golden Coffin. Sir, please help this ignorant junior. Old Brown Scale begged the old shaman. The old shaman smiled at the young merman. Child, you still have a lot of time in your life. Don't rush for success. Relax. I'll heal you. As he spoke, the old shaman chanted a few words in a low voice and successfully cast the spell. The spell's effect was swift and violent. The young merman quickly felt his body temperature drop rapidly, returning to normal, and at the same time, there was life energy in his blood. As his blood flowed, this energy quietly healed every hidden injury in his body. What kind of magic is this? The young Murloc revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. This is a type of blood magic called blood healing. The old shaman answered, and then asked, Do you feel better? I feel great. With this spell, I don't have to sleep at all. I can use the whole day to practice my sword skills. The young merman clenched his fist and shouted excitedly. Blood magic was relatively rare. Generally speaking, it was in the hands of blood elves, blood breeds, vampires, and some clerics of the evil god sections. The young merman didn't expect that the old shaman would have such a skill. But soon, he recalled that when he entered the Murloc village, the old Murloc shaman had also cast a spell to detect if there were any spies in the caravan. At the same time, the old Murloc shaman determined that he had nothing to do with the Bladefin tribe. That spell from before should also be a blood spell, right? You? Sauerkraut's eyes were a bit blank. He observed the pile of gravel beside the young merman's feet. You've already surpassed me. What the hell are you? I say, Old Brown Scale, although your sword skill is not difficult, it still needs to be improved. The young merman's words were a bit provocative. No, this sword skill is not easy at all. There's only one explanation for your rapid improvement. I'm afraid your bloodline is not simple. Old Brown Scale looked serious. The old shaman nodded. He agreed with Old Brown Scale speculation. He asked the young merman, Have you tested your bloodline? The two old mermen suspected the young merman's bloodline. However, if they were to test it now, they would at most find out the brown Scale merman's black iron bloodline and the dark blue wise man's bronze bloodline. The reason why the young merman could improve so quickly was that he had the intelligence of a human. and at the same time, he had a strong warrior foundation. The red scale flurry was difficult for a merman, but the human's combat skills were much more complicated and detailed in it. The young merman's situation was like an upperclassman in an academy learning the knowledge of a lower grade. He occupied a high position, and he was learning from a bird's eye view. The problems that troubled the merman were just small troubles to him. Looking at the two old mermen who suspected his bloodline, the young merman did not argue. To some extent, this suspicion was a good thing. He immediately shook his head and spread his hands. I don't have the chance to check my bloodline. That's true. The old shaman remembered his identity as a wandering hunter. The bloodline testing technology has always been in the hands of the three high races. Our town only selects a few people every year and sends them to the center of the sea, for a bloodline test. I suggest you check your bloodline. You should find something. The young merman replied, I want to, but I don't know any mermen from the three high races. If there's a chance, I'll introduce you. Old Brown Scale smiled. The young merman's shocking talent made Old Brown Scale adjust his attitude quickly. Before, he felt that the young merman held his head high, did not know the rules, and showed his wild nature. In fact, it was the young merman's first time interacting with other mermen as a merman, so he did not know the propriety of social interaction. It was hard to have a good impression of him, and he needed to be trained. Now, Old Brown Scale felt that the young merman's attitude was normal. A merman's genius should be like this. The young merman held his head high, turned his wrist, and flipped the knife. He casually urged Old Brown Scale, I've probably learned the red scale flurry. Teach me another combat skill. If you teach me, I'll return these two knives to you. You want to learn a second combat skill now? Old Brown Scale laughed. Seaweed is sometimes delicious, but if you stuff too much in your mouth, it's not easy to chew. That's my problem. Don't dawdle. Teach me another one. The young merman insisted on learning. According to their discussion, a bronze machete in exchange for a combat skill. The young merman needed a combat skill. He needed it very much. His previous combat skills, such as Dragon Claw, Flame Explosion, and so on, were all used in the Dragon Man form. It's not impossible to use it in the Fishman form, but the power will be greatly reduced, and it will also hurt himself. Just like the Red Scale Flurry, the knife combat skill itself was improved from the original version generation by generation, and it slowly became suitable for the Fishman to use. Although the young merman obtained a lot of Fishman blood, he could not obtain the Fishman's combat skills through the blood core. Old Brown Scale wanted to recruit the young merman. The latter already knew, but he pretended not to know. Old Brown Scale proposed to exchange 2 bronze machetes with combat skills, which was also what the young merman wanted. I need to learn 2 combat skills as soon as possible to improve the strength of the Fishman form. Then find an opportunity to go to the deepest part of the sea, and explore the half-bit wall. The young merman knew that he had to hurry, because according to the pattern, the day of the sea eruption was getting closer and closer. He needed to get information as soon as possible, and then return to the Justice Pirates in time to preside over the situation. Old Brown Scale pondered for a moment and said, I have 3 combat skills here. One is called Wave Treading, one is called Boomerang Blade, and the last one is Hard Scale. You look good. I'll demonstrate. Old Brown Scale demonstrated 3 combat skills one after another. When the Wave Treading fighting skill is used, it can create a strong thrust on the sole of the fishman's feet to help the fishman move quickly. Boomerang Blade is a throwing machete, which can be regarded as a compensation for the long-range combat ability. If it goes well, the thrown machete does not need to be picked up by the user. It will fly back by itself. Sometimes the water flow can be used to change the flight trajectory of the machete. The hard scale fighting skill is the most simple and unadorned. It is a defensive means. After use, it can make the scales of the fishman tougher and effectively reduce the damage. However, this combat skill has a very serious flaw for the young merman. That is, the quality of the combat power will be exposed after use. For example, after Old Brown Scale uses it, the scales all over his body will emit a black iron color. If the young merman uses it, it will be silver color, and the secret of him being a silver warrior will be exposed at once. Chapter 295. Without thinking for a long time, the young Murloc made his choice. I want to learn wave treading. It was not a difficult choice. The hard scale had its disadvantages, and the boomerang blade was the icing on the cake. With wave treading, the young Murloc's mobility would be greatly improved, and he would be able to advance and retreat freely in many battles. Although it was not an offensive or defensive fighting technique, it could greatly improve the young Murloc's fighting ability. The old man's eyes lit up. Wise choice. I will teach you the circulation route of fighting power. It is more complicated. The circulation route was not complicated, but the Murloc's intelligence was just that, so the young Murloc could easily understand. After a few attempts and several failures, the young Murloc's feet surged with water, and he suddenly jumped above the old man's head. The old man was stunned. You learned it just like that? Sauerkraut's mouth was wide open. It took him 2 years to learn this fighting technique. 2 whole years to learn it. The old Murloc shaman was also shocked. She looked at the young Murloc. Do you have the bloodline of a spellcaster? I know the wave treading fighting technique. The circulation route is complicated, and it is comparable to some beginner spells. Your spirit is not ordinary, and your ability to understand is very strong. Who are your parents? What kind of bloodline do you have? Therefore, the young Murloc's expression was slightly gloomy, and he told the shaman about his tragic past where both his parents died. I was raised by my mother. I heard from her that our original tribe encountered terrifying sea beasts during the Great Migration. My father died, and after my mother taught me the ability to survive alone, she got sick and died. Sky Pillar Sea is not my real hometown. I see. I'm similar to you, an orphan, and my master raised me, Sauerkraut said. The old man was like his adoptive father, and because of this, the old man took Sauerkraut as his successor without a qualified bloodline heir. The young Murloc glanced at Sauerkraut. He did not expect that the excuse he made up would dispel most of the Murloc's hostility, and he had a good impression of him. Child, you can totally treat this place as your home. The old Murloc shaman comforted him gently. The young Murloc shook his head. No, compared to living with other Murloc, I am more used to living alone in the wild. Old Brown Scale and Old Shaman looked at each other. The former smiled and said, Since you think so, we won't force you to stay. But before you leave, you two have to fight again. Don't forget. Sauerkraut's fighting spirit surged. This time, I will not be careless. I will use my full strength. The young merman snorted coldly and said with the arrogance of a genius, Do you think you still have a chance after I learn these 2 techniques? The old man laughed and said to the young Murloc, If you win this time, I will teach you another fighting technique. The young merman shook his head and retorted, No, I will snatch those 2 bronze scimitars. You have to teach me too. The old man said, Since we're going to fight, we won't take advantage of you. I'll give you a week to practice your fighting skills. The young merman shook his head again. No need, the day after tomorrow will do. He didn't want to stay here any longer. 1 week was too long. The young man's arrogance made the fishman Sauerkraut extremely embarrassed. He glared at the young man. 1 day is enough for you to practice? You're looking down on me too much. I'll let you taste the taste of defeat in the day after tomorrow. The news of a duel between the 2 spread. The mermen in the town were looking forward to it. The mermen all thought that Sauerkraut didn't display his true strength in the first round. The day after tomorrow, everyone's anticipation was interrupted by unexpected guests. The leading merman was tall and powerful. His physique was more than twice the size of the old man. He held a long scimitar and had a huge fish head. He was wearing a layer of metal armor. The surface of the armor emitted a faint magical glow. I am Manharden. The barbarian fish clan leader is my father. The merman's voice was hoarse. His silver aura was thick and strong. I'm here to recruit mermen to fight against the lobstermen in the suction nest trench. The mermen in the town gathered together and bowed to the merman Manharden. Even the shaman of the town was no exception. Even though Manharden cultivated fighting chi and had a higher status in the merman tribe, his status was higher. But Manharden's status was higher. The barbarian fish clan behind him was one of the top 3 clans in the Sky Pillar Sea. This merman town was under the protection of the barbarian fish clan. At the same time, they paid tribute on time. The old shaman asked, "How many mermen do you need?" The old man was very worried. The lobstermen in the suction nest trench were huge. Even if they won, the mermen would suffer heavy casualties. If things went wrong, the whole town would be destroyed. The old shaman had the same worry. But unexpectedly, Manharden said, "I don't need many people. I need transcendence to carry out a surprise attack." Bladefin Town sent out 2 iron and 7 bronze. You should send out the same number. Of course, if the old shaman wants to fight personally, I welcome you. Before the old shaman could say anything, the old man said, "I'll go. Lord Mayor, you are seriously ill. You should stay in the town to recuperate." The old shaman wasn't ill, but he coughed and said, "What a coincidence." Just as he said that, he was interrupted by Manharden. "Okay, I know. I'm guarding against Blade Fin Town. After all, the mayor of Blade Fin Town didn't participate in the battle. Okay, I don't want to waste time with you. I need to go to Sheepy Town to summon another group of people. Hurry up and call out your warriors." The old shaman used a spell to summon all the transcendents in the town. "Master, let me fight for you this time," Sauerkraut said to the old man. The old man scolded, "Nonsense, you haven't mastered your fighting skills yet. What are you going to do? Are you going to die?" The merman from Bladefin Town suddenly said, "Lord Manharden, I know this Sauerkraut. He was trained by the old man. He is very strong. Compared to him, the old man is old and weak. Oh, then, you can join the battle on behalf of your Sherfu." Man Jiang glanced at him, then casually gave the order. His attitude didn't allow anyone to refuse. The old man's expression changed. It didn't matter if he died in the battle. He was already so old, but Sauerkraut was still young. Sauerkraut was the hope of the town. But since Manharden said so, the old man could only nod and agree. The Murlocs of the Blade Fin Town immediately smiled as if their scheme had succeeded. "I'll join too." The young merman walked out of the crowd and asked to join. Seeing that he was also a black iron, the merman from Bladefin Town was surprised. Who was this strange merman? Why didn't they have any information about him? As a black iron warrior, he was already the backbone of the merman town. It didn't make sense that a black iron warrior had been trained in the town of an enemy, and they didn't have any information. The black iron merman in front of them seemed to have popped out of the mud. Seeing the young merman step forward, the old shaman and the old man looked at him with gratitude and admiration. "Good brother." Sauerkraut was very excited. She punched the young merman's chest. In fact, the young merman had his own plans. The main purpose of his trip was to gather information. So, Manharden was a better target than the old shaman and the old man. He needed to get close to Manharden. "You." The young merman held his black iron scimitar and pointed at the merman from Bladefin Town. "You talk a lot just now. Come and fight with me." The young merman issued a challenge. Everyone was very surprised. After they reacted, the old man shouted and said anxiously, "Don't be rash." The merman from Bladefin Town, who was provoked by the young merman, showed an angry expression. He grimaced and squeezed out the words from between his teeth. "Very good. You dare to challenge me, Sir Scar. Then let me teach you a lesson." The old shaman looked at Manharden for help. "Sir, you are about to go to war." But Manharden snorted and interrupted the old shaman again. "It doesn't matter. Let them fight. I also want to know my subordinate's real power. At the same time, I am very curious. What kind of courage can make this young merman challenge a famous master?" The merman Scar was a master second only to the mayor of Bladefin Town. He had been famous for a long time and had a fierce reputation. In the eyes of Manharden and the others, the young merman was extremely daring. He actually dared to provoke him. The battle soon began in front of the merman. Scar stroked the fins on his forearm with his palm and smiled. He didn't take the initiative to attack. He had obvious characteristics of the blade fin bloodline. There were fins on the outside of his forearm, the back of his calf, his entire head and back. The fins were dark silver in color, and the edges were very sharp. The blade fin merman's body was slimmer than a normal merman's. Scar was at least 2 heads taller than the young merman. The young merman flipped his wrist, and the black iron scimitar in his hand created a flower. Then he directly used his blade skill, red scale flurry. In the next moment, the young merman pounced towards Scar. Scar didn't have any weapons in his hands, but the pair of blade fins on his forearm was his natural weapon. He raised his arm, and the blade fins collided with the black iron scimitar, creating sparks. Scar had the power of a black iron rake. His blade fins were also black iron. He was completely unafraid of fighting against the scimitar in the young merman's hand. The young merman saw that his attack was blocked, but he wasn't discouraged. Instead, his attacks became more ferocious. The scimitar continued to slash out at a very fast speed, causing the water to flow wildly. Scar was calm and composed. His footsteps were calm. Sometimes he retreated, and sometimes he stepped forward. He blocked the young merman's fierce attacks while waiting for an opportunity to strike. Sauerkraut saw that the young merman had the upper hand and cheered loudly. The mermen in the town were also cheering for Benbow Not Good. Old Brown Scale was worried. Old Shaman was the same. The rest of the blade fin mermen crossed their arms and watched from the sidelines. Some of them sneered as they had full confidence in Scar. Old Brown Scale was even more worried. Benbow is too reckless. He used all his strength from the start. I know Scar very well. He wants to plot against Benbow. Since the start of the battle, he has never taken the initiative to attack. He has been conserving his strength, and Benbow's crazy attacks will consume his strength quickly. Once his strength is slightly lacking and he shows a flaw, it will be Scar's time to counterattack. When Scar really attacks, his speed is extremely fast. It should be Benbow's first time fighting with a blade fin merman. It is hard for him to adapt to their speed. I'm afraid he will be cut open by the blade fins. But there was no use in worrying. Old Brown Scale and Old Shaman had lost control of the situation. Sure enough, just as Old Brown Scale predicted, the young merman's attacks were not successful. His strength was decreasing and his blade speed was gradually decreasing. Scarface laughed sinisterly and suddenly attacked. "Be careful," Old Brown Scale exclaimed. But Scar's forearm fiercely pushed towards the young merman. The hard blade fins were about to hit the young merman's chest. Fighting technique, Wave Treader. The next moment, the young merman's feet suddenly surged and pushed him a few steps away. Daobao missed. He stared at the young merman in shock. Manjin was also surprised. The young merman suddenly retreated to a safe distance. Then he suddenly stepped on the bottom of the sea and used Wave Treader again to push him toward Scar. The fierce scimitar attack appeared again. Scar was once again at a disadvantage. But this time, he was not as calm as before. He looked very embarrassed. The blade fin mermen were no longer calm. They looked at the young merman's figure in shock. "What's going on? Am I seeing things?" This brown scale merman is using 2 fighting techniques at the same time. Old Brown Scale and Old Shaman were pleasantly surprised. Sauerkraut showed a look of admiration. He also practiced Red Scale Chaotic Dance and Wave Treader. He was very clear that it was very difficult to use these 2 fighting techniques at the same time. Even Old Brown Scale could not do it. But the young merman was able to do it to this extent. His bloodline is definitely not simple. He is a genius. Old Shaman's words were also the consensus of the mermen watching the battle. Chapter 296. It was not easy to use multiple combat skills at the same time. At least 2 conditions had to be met. The first condition was that the 2 combat auras did not conflict with each other. The second condition was whether the user could multitask, be able to distribute combat aura, and perform multiple precise operations at the same time. The Crimson Scale Flurry was very complicated. When Old Brown Scale used this combat technique, he could not use any other combat techniques. However, the young Murloc could use wave treading at the same time. Using 2 combat skills at the same time gave people the feeling that it was as easy as drinking water. The onlooking Murlocs were shocked by the talent of running around. Red Scale Flurry Suppression was terrifying enough. In addition to Wave Treading's mobility, The young Murloc's combat power had increased tremendously. The more Scar fought, the more frustrated he was. The young Murloc had the upper hand. The rest of the Blade Fin Murloc were nervous and worried. Both sides fought for a while. Seeing that Scar was about to lose, Manhard suddenly said, "Stop. This duel is over. Dao Ba has been defeated, and the victor is you. What's your name?" Ran. The young Murloc retracted his sword and answered calmly. The Murlocs around cheered. Manhard nodded at the young Murloc, his face filled with admiration. Scar looked terrible. He stared at the young Murloc and asked, "Where are you from?" "Master Manhard. This guy's background is unknown. He might be a spy from the White-Eyed Clan or the Poison Arrow Clan." "Bullsh asterisk T. He's my nephew. He just joined our town. How could he be a spy?" Old Brown Scale shouted immediately. Sauerkraut immediately added, "A loss is a loss. What's there to argue about?" The young Murloc glanced at the master and disciple. He did not deny that Old Brown Scale recognized him as a relative. It was good for him. This way, Manhard would be more assured about his background. The Blade Fin Murloc did not bother with such an explanation. They had guessed it long ago. After all, both the young Murloc and Old Brown Scale were the Brown Scale bloodline. They had also learned Red Scale Flurry. It was Old Brown Scale's trump card. It was also his signature. The young Murloc laughed. Blade Fin Town is just SOSO. He looked like a young man who had achieved success. He raised his arms and walked around the edge of the duel ground, leaning against the onlooking Murlocs. The merfolk cheered even louder. Some of the Blade Fin fishmen were indignant, while others had gloomy expressions. "Take it easy. This is actually a good thing. We have forced out an unexpected opponent. If we hadn't come here with Master Manhard, we might still be in the dark. Now, the Hua Ran has been exposed. We will be on guard against him. Although he's a black iron, one more black iron won't affect the balance of power between the two sides." A Murloc comforted Scar. Scar nodded slowly and replied in a low voice filled with killing intent. "This brat is too arrogant. People like him won't live long." The young Murloc won the challenge. Together with Sauerkraut and the other Murlocs, they joined Manjin's team in a high-profile manner. Manhard rested in the town, and the old shaman ordered the Murlocs to prepare lunch. Taking advantage of this time, Old Brown Scale pulled the young Murloc to a corner. The terrain of the suction nest trench is complicated. You have to be careful. You have offended the Blade Fin fishmen. If they get the chance, they will attack you. I'll teach you that defensive fighting technique. You are a genius among us brown-scaled fishmen. It will be easy for you to learn." Thus, the young Murloc received the sturdy scale fighting technique. This time, "Thank you very much." Old Brown Scale taught him the fighting technique and thanked the young Murloc. The young Murloc waved his hand casually. "I just don't like them." Old Brown Scale lowered his voice again. "We will keep your origin a secret. Just treat you as my nephew. Don't casually expose your past as a wandering Murloc. Manhard is a noble. These upper-class people don't trust outsiders." "Okay, I will remember." The young Murloc nodded. Both he and Old Brown Scale were very happy. The young Murloc received an appropriate identity, while the Old Brown Scale connected the young Murloc himself and the town closely together. From this point, Old Brown Scale had an unprecedented feeling of gratitude towards the Blade Fin fishmen who assisted him. After lunch, the team left the town and continued their journey. The Murloc towns were not safe. Anything could happen in the wild. But when they came to the third town that night, they were only attacked by 2 groups of sharks. These blind sharks had all become the trophies of this team of elite Murlocs. In this town, Manhard successfully recruited a team of Murloc extraordinaires. Most of these Murloc were the Steelbone Knight bloodline. Each of them had their own mount. The most common mount was a sea toad. Other than that, there were also rare crabs and turtles. These sea beasts were also demonic beasts. Most of them were bronze-level demonic beasts, but there were also 2 or 3 black iron-level demonic beasts. The team rested for a night in the Murloc Knights' sea town. The next morning, after breakfast, they directly set off. After spending 2 days and 1 night, the team arrived at the periphery of the suction nest trench. "Do you see these small holes?" Sauerkraut pointed at the black holes on the cliffs of the trench, and said to the young Murloc. These small black holes were very common and almost covered the entire trench. Seeing the young Murloc nod, Sauerkraut warned seriously. Don't get close to these holes. Some of them are connected. Sometimes these holes will explode with a terrifying suction force and suck everything nearby into the hole. The suction force is very terrifying. Not to mention black iron warriors like us, even silver-level demonic beasts will suffer. If you're lucky enough, you might be able to crawl out of the hole. The Murloc that is sucked in will most likely not be able to come back. Who knows what's inside? The suction nest trench was truly a dangerous place. Other than the dangerous terrain, there was also a large lobsterman tribe living here. Under Manhard's leadership, the team went deep into the suction nest trench. Not long after, one of the Murloc scouts in the front swam back to report that he had found a lobsterman and asked for instructions. Kill him directly. Manhard was filled with murderous intent. The young Murloc mixed in with the team. After advancing for a while, he found the lobsterman's corpse. This lobsterman had a brownish-red shell. He was about 3 meters long and 2 meters tall. His shell was mottled, showing that he was very old. The scallops beside the lobsterman's corpse showed that this old lobsterman came out alone to look for food. The lobsterman's staple food was the meat in the shell. Of course, they would also go out to hunt sometimes. Any fish, including Murloc, were their food. Similarly, Murloc also ate lobstermen. In fact, on land, lobsterman's meat was considered delicious by all races. The young Murloc looked at the corpse and sharply found that the fatal wound was on his head. This was an obvious cut, located in the narrow gap between the shells. The one who attacked should be a blade-fin fishman. Whether it was his movement speed or the speed of his blade, they were both very fast. The scene from before appeared in the young Murloc's mind. An old lobsterman was using a pair of pliers to pry open the shell and take out the meat inside. The blade-fin fishman scout quietly approached him. After reaching a certain distance, he suddenly swam over. Just as the lobsterman reacted, the blade-fin fishman scout was like a sharp arrow brushing past him. The lobsterman stopped in place, blue blood spurting out from the wound on his head. In the next moment, his huge body fell down. Due to the difference in their bloodline, the blade-fin fishman's body was taller. When they swam, they were faster than the brown-scaled fishmen. Of course, this was under the condition that they did not use their fighting skills. The young Murloc walked to the lobsterman's corpse and tried to use his black iron scimitar to cut the lobsterman's shell. Soon, he broke the lobsterman's shell, but it took a lot more effort than he thought. This is a bronze-level lobsterman. Its shell is already this hard. In a real battle, I should try to find the gaps between the shells. The young Murloc told himself. Master Manhard, should we destroy this lobsterman's body? A Murloc asked. No need. Let him spread the aura of death. I want to see the lobsterman's expression of shock and fear. Ha ha, let's continue. Manhard waved his hand and continued to lead the group forward. His unscrupulous attack quickly attracted the attention of the lobstermen. More and more lobstermen appeared in their path. Chee! With a soft sound, the young Murloc's black iron scimitar cut through the lobsterman's shell and killed him. But in the next moment, 3 lobstermen's giant pincers attacked from 3 different directions. The young Murloc hurriedly used wave treading and retreated. But there were lobstermen behind him. Luckily, at the moment of impact, the young Murloc used his blood core and turned the fish scales on his back into dragon scales, greatly increasing his defense. The lobsterman was knocked away, and the young Murloc turned back into fish scales. Now, his control over his blood core had increased to a very high level. The lobsterman that was knocked away by the young Murloc turned around and was about to attack the young Murloc from the back. But at that moment, Sauerkraut rushed over and stabbed the lobsterman's heart, helping the young Murloc to escape. The young Murloc and Sauerkraut fought side by side. When they looked around, they saw red lobster shells everywhere. The lobstermen were much taller than the Murloc, and they outnumbered the Murloc group. However, most of the lobstermen were normal life forms, and the ratio of superhumans was even lower than the Murloc. After the Murloc superhumans worked together to withstand the first wave of attacks, the lobstermen began to be slaughtered one by one. In this battle, Manhard revealed his silver aura for the first time in his life. There are at least 3 silver-level lobstermen and a black iron-level lobsterman shaman. This time, our group's strength has been completely exposed. Next, we might face the main force of the lobstermen, Scar said worriedly. There were too few people in the group, and this was the lobstermen's territory. If there was a group of normal Murloc assisting them, Scar would be much more confident. Chapter 297. Ever since they entered the trench, they had already experienced more than 10 battles. The scale of the battles was getting bigger and bigger, and the intensity was also getting higher and higher. Manhard snorted and looked at Knife Scar with dissatisfaction. "Are you scared?" Knife Scar quickly explained. "I am willing to go through fire and water for the barbarian fish tribe." "Sir, I'm just worried about your safety." Manhard sneered. "Let's stop here. The frontal attack can end now. Follow me." Manhard suddenly changed the route of the team. After a few turns, the fishmen came to a corner of the trench. "This sucking hole can send us directly to the lobsterman's nest." Manhard pointed at the black hole in the corner of the trench and finally told them his plan. "We will go in together and attack their nest and snatch the pearls in their storage. Remember, the more pearls we snatch this time, the greater our contribution and the greater the reward each of you will get. These pearls are all tributes to the sea god. So, the reward will not be unjust. Do you understand?" The fishmen responded in unison. They were all excited, and their low morale was greatly boosted. Manhard was swift and decisive. He was the first to enter the sucking hole. The rest of the fishmen followed closely behind. None of them ran away. Their current position was already the hinterland of the trench. It was extremely difficult to safely break out of the encirclement by themselves. This was also the reason why Manhard was not worried about the other fishmen following him. So Sir Manhard already had a plan, but entering the sucking hole, this is too crazy. Pickled Cabbage kept shaking his head. "Let's go quickly." The young fishman pushed him. Pickled Cabbage entered the sucking hole and was sucked into the depths of the trench. The young fishman also swam into the sucking hole. The sucking hole reacted quickly, and the surrounding water flow suddenly became turbulent. The young fishman was like a cannonball, quickly passing through the narrow and dark tunnel. The time spent in the sucking hole was much less than expected. Not long after, the young fishman was thrown out, and he almost fell into the sand at the bottom of the sea. The young fishman relied on his fighting skills to forcefully twist his body, and his feet were planted on the ground, barely stabilizing his body. This scene made Manhard nod slightly, and he was not stingy with his praise. "Running around, you are not bad." Most of the Murlocs that were spat out by the suction nest would fall into the sand at the bottom of the sea. They would be dizzy from the fall, and their bodies would be in great pain. Although the tunnel in the ocean trench was smooth, there were many places that were not soft. Bumps and bumps were inevitable during the shuttling process. The young merman's entire body was also sore, suffering from many bruises. Many scales had been scraped off. He suddenly understood why Man insisted on building a team of superhumans. This was because ordinary Murlocs could not withstand the impact of shuttling in the suction nest, and it was very likely that they would be knocked to death inside. Only superhumans who activated their fighting aura and increased their defense could survive. The young merman waited for a while, and the team was finally full again. "If we go back, we'll have to pass through the sucking nest as well. But not here. Remember to follow me closely. Do you understand?" Manjiang growled. The fishman's escape route was in his hands, and they had no choice but to burst forth with a strong fighting spirit. The scout brought back a piece of good news. Because the Murlocs had wreaked havoc in the trench, most of the lobstermen in the lair had gone out to fight. Only a small group of lobstermen were left, and they did not detect any silver-level aura. Manjiang was overjoyed. There was more than one silver-level aura in the lobsterman tribe, but this time his luck was very good, and they had all gone out. "Charge with me," Manjiang roared, and with a long blade in his hand, he rushed to the front. Then, the fishmen shouted in unison and rushed to the lobsterman's lair, a huge cave. The lobstermen in the lair hurriedly fought. But this group of garrison troops was few in number, and their cultivation was not high either. They were all old, weak, sick, and disabled. Soon, they were all swept away by the fishmen. Man Jiang led the team into the depths of the cave. Inside, the lobstermen had dug out many small holes to serve as rooms. There were many fishmen, and they spread out one by one to search. Soon, they found a storehouse of the lobstermen, and there were many pearls inside. Many of them were of high quality, and the young merman even saw a gold-level dimpled pearl. "Quick, quick, quick! Take all these pearls," Man Jiang urged. The fishmen all took action, racing against time. They all knew that time was limited. Once the main force of the lobstermen returned, it would be difficult for them to leave. The lair of the lobstermen was very rich. Most of them were pearls. Their collection of pearls was much more than the fishmen. One of the main reasons was that the lobstermen's staple food was shellfish meat. The fishmen were not. When the lobstermen pried open giant shells at the bottom of the sea and ate the fresh and tender shellfish meat, they would often find pearls of good quality. The lobstermen also rarely traded with the outside world, so over time, they naturally had a lot of pearls in storage. Other than pearls, there were also water plants and other food reserves in the storehouse. There were a few potions and medicinal herbs, which meant that the lobsterman shaman had the ability to concoct a few types of potions. There were also some miscellaneous items. Some of these miscellaneous items were magic ores picked up from the bottom of the sea, some were ship portraits brought back from sunken ships, and some were captured enemy weapons and equipment after winning battles. The young merman's eyes lit up, and he pulled out a gun from a pile of miscellaneous items in a cave. This was a short-handle gun. The gun's caliber was very large, and it seemed to be made of red copper, and the style was rough. The handle and trigger, made of red crystal, added a warm aura to the gun. Could it be Dragon's Kiss? The young merman thought of a famous gun. This famous gun was called Dragon's Kiss, and it was a legendary short-handled gun. In terms of appearance, it was very similar to the one the young merman found now. Dragon's Kiss has been missing for many years. Could it have fallen here? There was no answer. For the time being, there was no way to confirm his guess. The young merman directly inserted the gun into his belt. Quick, quick, quick! Manhard began to gather the team. The fishmen swam out from various small caves. Many of them were holding pearls, and some were even carrying treasure chests. There were also people who had harpoons, cutlasses, and other weapons in their hands. Therefore, even though the young man had a short-handled gun with an obscure aura on his waist, he was still inconspicuous in the team. Manhard tacitly allowed the fishmen to steal. His main purpose for this trip was the pearls. The pearls that the fishmen plundered could be piled up into a small hill half the height of a person. Some of the pearls were very large, like wash basins. The pure white and sparkling pearls were grabbed into a few large chests, and the fishmen began to carry them and retreat. Halfway through the retreat, the team of fishmen met with the main force of the lobstermen who rushed back to help. Someone must stay behind to cover the retreat. Knife Scar reminded Manhard in a low voice, "I think this group of people is very suitable." Manhard snorted coldly and pointed out a group of fishmen from Night Sea Town, Brown Scale Town, and Bladefin Sea Town, and ordered them to stay behind to cover the retreat. "Send the pearls out of the nest, and we will come back to help you. Hold on, there is no way to escape here." Manhard threw out these words and turned to leave. The fishmen who were pointed out had the will to die, and were stationed in the same place, resisting the attack of the angry lobstermen, and using their lives to buy time for Manhard and the others. The young merman was not pointed out, and he followed Manhard closely. Pickled cabbage was the same. This was not their luck, but Manhard purposely did it. Manhard knew that the relationship between the young merman, pickled cabbage, and the old brown scale town was not shallow. If he purposely sacrificed these two people, it would definitely cause strong dissatisfaction from the higher-ups of the brown scale town, which was not beneficial to the rule of the barbarian fish tribe. The young merman followed Manhard and found the right nest. Manhard left a few fishmen behind and asked them to go back to inform the rest of the team, while he took the most precious box of pearls and went into the nest. Not long after, the young merman also took a small box of pearls and went through the tunnel in the rock wall and reached the other side. Manhard organized the team while waiting. After a while, they did not see the fishmen who were covering the retreat, but a group of lobstermen searching for them. Damn it! Manhard's expression changed. He saw that there was a silver-ranked lobsterman in this search team. Manhard fought with the silver-ranked lobsterman warrior. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand. The rest of the fishmen gave way to the two silver-ranked leaders, and they all found other lobstermen to fight. Frankly speaking, Manhard's fighting power was strong, and he used his fighting skills one after another, firmly suppressing the opposing lobsterman leader. But the more Manhard fought, the more anxious he became. The lobsterman's shell was thick, and he knew that he could not win against Manhard alone, so he almost gave up on attacking and purely defended. He wanted to stall for time, but Manhard could not defeat him in a short period of time. "Scar, come and help me." Manhard roared. He had a fighting skill, but it needed some time to accumulate power. But the lobsterman leader tangled with him, not giving him any time to accumulate power. Scar braced himself and charged forward. The lobsterman leader roared and directly swept Scar away. Manhard ordered another steel-boned fisherman knight to go forward and block. This unlucky fisherman knight was cut in half by the lobsterman and died tragically on the spot. The fisherman knights all lost their mounts. Their mounts had been left behind when they passed through the nest for the first time. The mounts were too big to pass through the nest. At the crucial moment, the young merman suddenly rushed over. The lobsterman leader attacked him, and the young merman used two fighting skills at the same time, red scale flurry and wave treading. His whole body was in a mess, and the lobsterman leader's attacks failed repeatedly. The red scale flurry allowed the young merman to have the ability to block a silver-ranked attack head-on without fully using his silver-ranked fighting chi. Wave treading greatly increased the young merman's mobility. This time, it was the lobsterman leader's turn to be extremely frustrated. The young merman was like a fly, buzzing around him, but he could not deal with him. "Well done, running around. When we go back, I will reward you greatly." Manhard roared. He finally got the chance, raised his long-handled broadsword, and slashed down vertically. The surface of the broadsword shone with silver light and became extremely sharp. The lobsterman resisted with all his strength, but his pincers were directly cut in half, and then his entire upper body was cut in half, leaving only the lower body's tail intact. Manhard killed his opponent and spat out a mouthful of turbid air. He did not rest and immediately attacked the other lobstermen. The lobsterman team thus collapsed and were quickly slaughtered. Go, go, go. Manhard did not wait for the other fishmen and hurriedly led the team away from the trench. Then, the main force of the lobstermen who rushed over missed. A few days later, the young merman followed Manhard and the others to Sea City. Chapter 298. Because of some fortuitous encounters, the young Murloc successfully explored the center of the sky pillar Ocean Eye. At the bottom of the sea, there was an underwater city, Ocean Eye City. At a glance, there were three most eye-catching buildings in Ocean Eye City. They were the nests of the barbarian fish tribe, the white-eyed pearl tribe, and the poison arrow tribe. Their nests were built with underwater rocks, corals, and so on. They were like three hills. However, there were many holes on the surface of these hills. They were not beautiful at all. This was the home of the Murlocs, and also a heavily guarded fortress. At a glance, the young Murloc knew that these three nests were easy to defend and hard to attack. The terrain inside must be very complicated, and there must be many traps and ambushes. Between these three fortresses was an oval-shaped temple. The temple had no roof, and it was like an arena. Compared to the three tribes' fortresses, the temple was shorter, but it was the most important building in Ocean Eye City. At the center was the temple, and the inner circle was the three fortresses. Outside the fortresses were a large number of low stone houses, shacks, and caves. These stone houses, shacks, and caves were inhabited by the city's lower and middle-class Murlocs. They occupied most of the population of Ocean City. The young Murloc only looked a few times from a high place, and then swam to the bottom of the sea. Ocean City was the center of politics, military, and economy. It was the only city, and its defense was the tightest. Around the city, there were Murlocs riding sea beasts, forming patrols. If the young Murloc stayed too long and spied on the city for too long, these patrols would cause trouble for him, and they might even arrest him. Ocean City had a total of 3 gates, which were controlled by the 3 tribes. The young Murloc mixed in with Manjin's team. They first passed through the dense stone houses, shacks, and so on, before reaching the city gate. There were many Murloc guards at the city gate, and the chief among them was a Murloc shaman. The Black Iron level Murloc shaman bowed to Manjin and then began to cast spells to check everyone in the team. After casting 3 different detection spells in a row, the shaman let them go. The young Murloc finally stepped into the inner city of Ocean City. The buildings here were obviously much more high-end than those outside the city. Even the stone houses were similar in appearance. The roads between the houses were also clearly planned. There was even greenery by the roadside. Some corals were specially planted to serve as street lamps. There were also beautiful dark green aquatic plants that swayed in the wind. In some places, there were even buildings with special appearances. There were arenas, farms, sea beast rearing grounds, and so on. Man Gang assigned Knife Scar, Sauerkraut, and the young merman to some stone houses. You guys stay here first. I will send someone to pick you guys up for the celebration dinner tonight. The stone room that the youth was assigned to was very large. To be precise, it was a villa. There was a small garden in front of the villa, and behind the villa, there was a specially planted seabed giant bamboo. There were many rooms in the stone villa. They were divided into the first and second floors. The facilities in the room were complete. There were a large number of totems, woven waterweed, and so on, displaying the customs of the merfolk. It was worth noting that there was a shrine set up in the hall. In the shrine, there was an exquisitely carved statue of a fish god. Clearly, it was the fish god. The young man looked around and didn't find any surveillance methods for the time being. He pretended to be careless and checked the pearl foam in the bag on his body. These pearl foam were mixed among many exquisite small pearls, making it difficult to distinguish the difference. The young merman found that a pearl foam had obviously shrunk a lot. It should have been consumed when passing through the city gate's magic detection not long ago. This time, he sneaked into the settlement of the merfolk. Naturally, he was fully prepared. He brought a lot of pearl foam and almost emptied the inventory into shells. The pearl foam was very useful, but the fairy tales of the merfolk were getting fewer and fewer. This time, if we don't get the replenishment of divine power, we won't be far from being exposed and being hunted by the Empire. The young man pondered over the unexpected seizure from the lobster man's nest, the gun that seemed to be the dragon's kiss. The gun's appearance was gorgeous and rough. Its aura was obscure, like an ordinary item. If the young man didn't see its unique appearance, he might have missed it. After all, judging from its aura, it wasn't attractive at all. The young man tried to imbue it with fighting spirit, but it couldn't move it. Its triggers seemed to be fixed. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pull it. Is it really a handicraft? The young merman changed his method and tried several times, but there was still no progress. He couldn't help but doubt his previous judgment. At this time, someone knocked on the door of the stone house. The young man opened the door. It wasn't the messenger of the barbarian fish tribe, but Pickled Cabbage. Pickled Cabbage was also assigned a stone house, but he couldn't stay alone. He felt bored, so he came to find the young merman next door. What do you think the barbarian fish tribe will reward us with this time? Pickled Cabbage was looking forward to it. It would be great if they could reward us with a qualification to take the fish god's test. God's test. The young merman's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but guess. Is it related to the half-plane? Song Su had once determined that there was a half-plane here. It was very likely that the main temple of the blue charm god was in a half-plane. Song Su had also received key information. Whenever the center of the eye of the sea spewed out a heavenly spring, a god's messenger would descend from the sky and preach to the merfolk settlement. The god's test should be something that everyone knew. The young merman couldn't ask directly, so he sighed. Yes, I also want to be qualified to take the fish god's test. Pickled Cabbage's eyes lit up, and he looked fascinated. If we can pass the test successfully, our abilities will definitely improve greatly. Tell me, if we combine our contributions, can we ask Master Manjiang to exchange for a chance to participate in the test? I think we can try. The young merman urged Pickled Cabbage. In the process, he was beating around the bush. Pickled Cabbage was straightforward and didn't guard against the young merman. Soon, the young merman got the key information out of him. The young merman knew that whenever the eye of the sea spewed out a heavenly pillar-like spring, the merfolk would know the approximate date of the arrival of the god's messenger. Not only would they welcome the god's messenger, accept the god's preaching, and hold a large-scale ceremony, but they would also organize a group of elite merfolk to charge into the heavenly pillar-like spring and enter the half-plane to take the fish god's test. The merfolk in the Eye of the Sea mainly believed in the fish god. In myths, the merfolk believed that their first ancestors were originally ordinary fish that flowed at the bottom of the river of life. The fish god led a small group of fish and kept swimming upstream. After going through hardships, they followed the fish that didn't give up. They swam to the middle and lower reaches and transformed into merfolk. It could be said that without the fish god's lead, there wouldn't be the current merfolk race. Every eruption of the heavenly pillar-like spring was a test for the fish god. The merfolk who went through this test were injured and killed, but more of them improved their strength greatly. The merfolk warriors, or every merfolk with lofty ambitions, want to take part in the fish god's test. Maybe the fish god's test is held in the half-plane. The young man had some guesses. He chatted with Pickled Cabbage for a while, and Manjin's messenger came to inform them. Then, under the guidance of the messenger, the young man, Pickled Cabbage, Knife Scar, and other meritorious people were brought into Manjin's fortress. Just as the young merman had expected, the passageways in the fortress extended in all directions. They were crooked and very complicated. After many turns, the young merman and the others were brought to a dining hall. There were many stone stools and stone tables. The young man and the others sat down one by one. After a while, Manjin appeared in front of everyone again. He sat on the main seat and announced the start of the banquet. The dishes were delicious. The main dishes were various kinds of sashimi. There was also a cut octopus tentacle dipped in a mud sauce. The taste was very good, and it left a deep impression on the young merman. There was also wine in the banquet. The wine was a very ordinary rum, but to the merfolk, it was a rare item. The wine bottle was specially made, like a water bag cloth, and could be squeezed. The mouth of the wine bottle was a mouthpiece. The merfolk sucked on a mouthpiece and squeezed the wine into their mouths. Manjin even invited the merfolk to dance. These merfolk did not have a graceful figure, but each of them had well-developed limbs and a sturdy physique. They danced a war dance, shouting and whistling continuously, showing the valiant merfolk customs. Manjin, Knife Scar, and the others watched with great interest. Pickled Cabbage even swallowed her saliva. The young man could not appreciate such beauty of the opposite sex. Especially in his opinion, these merfolk came from the barbarian fish tribe. Each of them had a huge fish head, and compared to the usual brown, scaled merfolk, they were more barbaric and rough. Among the people present, the one who was most in line with the young man's aesthetic was the blade-finned merfolk. Knife Scar squeezed the wine and looked at the young merman with hatred. He did not know that in the young man's eyes, he was the most beautiful merman. Pickled Cabbage might have drunk too much, and she began to whisper in the young man's ear, "If only we could get a barbarian fish woman to be our wife, we would be part of the barbarian fish tribe. Do you know? I have the blood of the barbarian fish tribe in my veins. Sai, unfortunately, I can't do that. I want to take over my master's position and stay in Brownscale Town. But you can. Run around." Pickled Cabbage left her seat and sat beside the young man. She put her hand on the young man's shoulder, and her attitude was very friendly. The young man turned his head slightly and stared at Pickled Cabbage's big eyes. "Your master taught me so many fighting techniques just to keep me in the town. If I listen to you and leave the town, your master will be angry with you." Pickled Cabbage patted the young man's shoulder. Hee, then let him be angry. Staying in the town or staying in the city? Obviously the latter is better for you. When we go back tonight, I will teach you the boomerang sword fighting technique. After the thrilling battle in the suction nest trench, Pickled Cabbage and the young man's relationship had become much closer. The young man was silent for a moment. At this moment, he felt Pickled Cabbage's kindness. He also felt Pickled Cabbage's yearning. He yearned for the sea city and a barbarian fishwoman to be his wife, because life here was more exciting and there was more room for development. But he could not. He could only entrust this yearning to Ron. Chapter 299. A few days later. "All right, you can stop here." At the city gate, the fishman Sauerkraut said to the young fishman. On the night of the banquet, Sauerkraut taught the young fishman the boomerang sword fighting technique. After the young man learned it, he fought with Sauerkraut and won. Sauerkraut looked at the city gate of Ocean City with nostalgia and sighed. He whispered to the young fishman, "I still lost to you. I really don't understand what's in your head. How did you learn those fighting techniques so quickly? Huh? You should stay here. You should test your bloodline when you have the chance. I think there will be a surprise. Maybe a big surprise. You should be different the next time we meet. Let's go." The young man stood near the city gate and watched Sauerkraut and his companions leave until their figures were completely blocked by the stone house. Almost all the fishmen in the brown-scale town chose to leave Ocean City, except for the young fishman. The young man wanted to gather more information. On the second day after the banquet, he expressed his intention to join Manhard. Manhard accepted. After all, the young fishman was a black iron level warrior. Even in Ocean City, there were only a few silver level fishmen. Black iron level fishmen were the true backbone of the forces. Plus, Manhard had a deep impression of the young fishman. Therefore, the young fishman officially became a member of the barbarian fish tribe. He didn't live in the stone house, but moved to the barbarian fish fort. It's wise to leave. What's the use of you staying?" Scar came to the young fishman's side with a disdainful expression. He was also here to send him off. A portion of the fishmen in Bladefin Town also chose to leave today, but he stayed. "Look here." Scar pointed at his forehead. There was nothing there before, but now there was a new divine art imprint. "Do you see it? This is the proof of qualification for the fish god's test. I stayed to participate in the test. If you stay, even if you join the barbarian fish tribe, what can you do? An outsider will always be an outsider. No matter how hard you work, you're just a brown scale. You're even worse than Sauerkraut. At least he has a trace of the barbarian fish bloodline in him. No matter how much Master Manhard likes you, you're just a hired thug. You want to be accepted by the upper echelons of barbarian fish? Stop dreaming." The young merman remained silent. No matter how much Dalba taunted him, his heart remained calm. This was because the former did not know the young man's true identity and intentions. The youth was more curious about how Scarface had obtained this divine imprint. Noticing that someone was looking at his forehead, Scar smiled proudly. "Don't even think about it. You can't afford the tribute, you pauper. Do you see the sea loach?" As Scar spoke, he used his foot to kick the sand at the bottom of the sea. Suddenly, a loach drilled out of the sand. This kind of sea loach was gray and very common, just like the cats and dogs in the human cities. The sea loach was buried in the shallow layer of the sea sand. Now that it was picked out, it immediately fled. But Scar's foot was one step faster, and he stepped on it directly. The sea loach struggled under Dalba's feet. Dalba sneered at the young merman. "Look, you're just like this loach. Understand? Brown scale bloodline? Black iron is your limit. But the Bladefin bloodline is not enough. We have silver level bloodline. Wait until I pass the fish god's test. I will come and settle the score with you. Dalba, I will make you pay back the humiliation you brought me 100 times over. Just you wait." "Okay, I will wait." The young merman looked at Scar with pity and turned to leave. What Scar said was not false. The blade-fin bloodline was indeed more outstanding than the brown-scale bloodline. If not, the blade-fin town would not have been able to suppress the brown-scale town. Seeing the young merman leave, Scar smiled proudly. Just as he was about to leave, a group of mermen came to find him. "Scar, I've finally found you." The leading merman's scales were a sickly green, and his eyes had a pair of purple pupils. This was the distinctive sign of a poison arrow merman. The poison arrow tribe and the barbarian fish tribe had the same status, and their bloodline was gold level. Scar's aura immediately fell to the bottom. "Who are you? What do you want?" "I am from the barbarian fish tribe." Weren't you very arrogant when you bullied a brown scale?" "Don't worry, I will not find trouble with you. I'm only looking for a duel with you." "How about it? Do you dare to have a fair duel with me?" The leader of the poison arrow merman provoked. Scar's face was very ugly. He gritted his teeth and finally shook his head with difficulty. "Before the fish god's test, I will not accept any challenges." Thus, the poison arrow merman started to make a ruckus and ridiculed Scar, labeling him as a coward and a coward. There were many mermen at the city gate. Hearing the noise and ridicule of the poison arrow merman, the surrounding mermen all looked over. Many of the barbarian fish tribe's mermen were very angry. Some waved their fists and shouted, "That blade-fin merman! Are you a coward? You let your tribe be humiliated and you don't dare to accept a challenge." Scar was so angry that he gritted his teeth. The actions of the poison arrow merman were very humiliating to the mermen who worshipped martial arts. "You are a sea loach, do you know that? You only know how to hide in the sand. Even if you are a baby merman, you are more courageous than you. Blade fin tribe, humph, you are only SOSO." In the midst of the ridicule, Scar lowered his head and quickly left the city gate. The young merman, who did not walk far, saw the scene of Scar being humiliated. He did not feel any joy or happiness. Instead, he felt sad, because he thought of sauerkraut. Sauerkraut's goodwill made the young merman understand that sauerkraut saw him as a friend. Scar despised sauerkraut, and was also despised by the poison arrow merman. Just like how people once looked down on the big guy, they also looked down on the goblin Sandow. Bloodlines divided the lives of different races into different levels. The difference between different bloodlines was very hard to make up for. Sauerkraut's reluctance and envy. What was the difference between him and Baya? At this moment, the young merman suddenly admired the ward dealer. This legendary alchemist did not covet his own enjoyment after obtaining the blood core. Instead, he researched and tried to use the blood core in a wider field to help more people. "It is a pity that I'm only a knight, not an alchemist." The young merman sighed in his heart. What was the blood core? The young merman could only find out its function. In fact, he could not control it in detail. When the big guy died due to bloodline conflict, the young merman did not dare to risk using the blood core. The blood core was even worse than the gun that was suspected to be the dragon's kiss. It did not reveal any aura, so the young merman could not determine its grade. The young merman took away the tower genie and many records of the ward dealer's blood core tests. According to the method developed by the ward dealer, the young merman could forcibly instill the bloodline in the blood core into another life form. However, there were many flaws that could not be solved. After a life form obtained a bloodline, there would be bloodline conflict. The consequences of the conflict were very serious, almost certain death. In a limited number of cases of survival, the test subjects were paralyzed and lost their minds. They constantly had seizures, living a life worse than death. The ward dealer's latest development was artificial magic beasts. He began to instill bloodline in embryos and eventually created magic beasts such as spear scorpions and blade spiders. Although these magic beasts could live for a long time, they still had major drawbacks. They could not self-regulate their magic power. If the magic power was not balanced, they could not form magic crystals. Once out of the anti-magic environment, they would be counterattacked by the chaotic magic power in their bodies and eventually die. Sometimes, the chaotic magic power would conflict so badly that it would even cause an explosion. Let's not think about these things. The young merman collected his emotions and looked around. He had already arrived at the market in the city. The merman merchants here sold all kinds of goods, most of which were food. Fish, shells, crabs, lobsters, octopuses, seaweed, kelp, and so on. According to the young merman's understanding these days, there were a total of 3 major markets in CI City. This market mostly sold daily necessities. There was also a more high-end market that sold extraordinary equipment, fighting skills, chi arts, and so on. Mermen traded with each other, mostly using a kind of shell money. Most of the time, they also bartered. Of course, the gold, silver, and copper coins used between humans, elves, dwarves, beasts, and other major races were also limited in use in the merman market. Those who could use these coins were the more high-end trade transactions. The young merman had a lot of shell money in his hands, which was a reward for his excellent performance in the suction trench. He walked and looked, sometimes stopping at the stalls to ask about the price. Look at this rubber sea cucumber, black, thick, and hard. One only sells for 3 coins. It's most suitable for a black iron warrior like you, sir. It's very easy to eat. You only need to pull the skin, and you can peel off the whole skin. The meat inside is very tender. Shell money was divided into large and small coins. The purchasing power of large coins was very strong. How much is this green conch? 3 for 1 coin. What about sea loaches? Sir, are you sure? 10 coins. I'll give you a whole basket. The dinner was very rich. Scar peeled off the skin of the rubber sea cucumber and put it into his mouth. He fiercely bit a few times and swallowed it before it was completely chewed. Oomph! You want to anger me, make me die in a duel, and steal my divine art imprint. No way. With a bang, Scar's fist slammed on the table. Poison Arrow Tribe. I will remember today's humiliation. Wait until I pass the fish god's test and become a silver warrior. Then I'll deal with that running around. Then I'll deal with you guys. One by one. There's no rush. Scar took out another rubber sea cucumber and vented his anger into appetite. But he did not notice that an ordinary sea loach had drilled out of the sand at the bottom of the sea and was behind him. The next moment, a red light flashed, and the young dragon appeared. Poof! The sharp dragon claws stabbed into Scar's body and directly crushed his heart. Chapter 300. Dong, dong, dong. There was an intense knocking sound at the door. Open the door. Rush, open the door. A large group of murlocs blocked the door. The young murloc opened the door, and the murloc fighters rushed into the room. There were still a few of them guarding the door, as if they were surrounding the room. What do you want? The young murloc's face was ugly. Sir Manhard? The young murloc suddenly asked in surprise. Manhard was the last to enter the young murloc's room. He stared at the young murloc with a serious face, and said in a heavy voice, Scar is dead. The young murloc was stunned at first, and then said in disbelief, What? He's dead? Manhard stared at the young murloc. The next moment, he saw a flash of joy on Rush's face, and then it disappeared. Then, the young murloc realized something, and his face became even uglier. Sir, I didn't do it. I've just pledged my allegiance to you. So how could I kill a colleague? The guards at the city gates saw Scar humiliate you, and you left angrily, Manhard said. And I also know that you have old grudges with him. Moreover, he directly threatened you, saying that he will come after you after the fish god's test. The young murloc was stunned for a moment, and then quickly nodded and stuttered, Yes, there is such a thing. But I wouldn't do that. How'd he die? He is a black iron. There must be traces left at the scene. The young murloc was eager to prove his innocence. Manhard snorted, and this was what they were surprised about. Scar was dead, and his death was not clear. It was extremely strange. The scene was very clean, and there were no signs of fighting. There was not even a fragment of Scar's body. If the temple did not inform them that the divine imprint had been transferred, perhaps everyone would have thought that Scar had mysteriously disappeared. A murloc shaman walked out from behind Manhard, and he looked at Rush with a gloomy gaze and explained, Not long ago, Scar offered a large number of razor fins to my clan, which were specially kept by the previous blade fin murloc experts after they died. There were even 7 silver-level razor fins. So, I gave him the qualification to participate in the fish god's test. That is the imprint. But this imprint has already been transferred to someone else. Scar won't give up on the imprint. In fact, he can't transfer the imprint on his own. The only explanation for the transfer of the imprint is that he was killed. The one who has the mark now is the murderer. The young fisherman immediately said, "Then check me. Quick, there must be a way to check if there is a mark on my body." "Of course," Man said firmly. "That's why we're here. Don't resist. In front of my lord, how could I dare to resist? Moreover, I have never done such a thing." The young Murloc spread out his hands and puffed out his chest, looking impatient. The fisherman shaman frowned and cast a spell. Everyone stared at Huo Yuhao's forehead. There was no reaction. In order to avoid any accidents, the Murloc shaman used it a few more times, but the result was the same. Seeing this, the rest of the Murlocs secretly relaxed. The young merman shouted, "What do you think? I'm innocent. I didn't kill Scar. Your suspicions have been temporarily lifted." Manjun patted the young man's shoulder. "But for the next few days, don't go out of the city. There will be more investigations." "Understood, my lord. Please investigate me as much as you want. But I'm not the murderer. It's useless to investigate me." The young merman shouted. "All right, I remember now. Scar had a conflict with the other Murlocs at the city gate. It was a group of poison arrow Murlocs. They seem to be looking for trouble with Scar. Maybe they don't speculate without evidence. I don't want you to say these words. Do you understand?" Manjun interrupted the young man. "Understood, my lord Manjun." The young man quickly nodded. Manjun waved his hand and led the group away. If only it was him. The fishman shaman said regretfully. Manjun shook his head. "Before coming, I felt that the possibility was very small. Next, should we investigate the Poison Arrow tribe?" The fishman shaman was in a difficult position. "Sigh." Manjun sighed deeply. "I feel that the possibility of them doing it is even smaller. Huo Yuhao might not know the severity of the situation, but who in the three great tribes doesn't know the rules? The one looking for trouble with Scar is Du Lu. Although his bloodline is strong, he is too young. Therefore, he was not chosen by the Poison Arrow tribe and did not have the qualifications to participate in the fish god test. He is the grandson of the current Poison Arrow tribe's leader. If we forcefully investigate him, I'm afraid that there will be friction with the Poison Arrow tribe." The fishman shaman was worried. Manjun gritted his teeth. "But we have to investigate. Scar is my man. Now that he is dead, not even a fish scale can be found. He even went missing in our barbarian fish fort. If we don't investigate, what will the outsiders think of me? This is not only my face, but also the barbarian fish tribe's face. To actually dare to do it in the barbarian fish fort. We have to find the daring culprit as soon as possible." The fishman shaman sighed. "Sigh, if only we could catch a random Murlocs and give them an explanation." Huo Yuhao was a good choice. Unfortunately, he did not have the divine art imprint. Now that the divine art imprint is lost in our hands, if we cannot find it, my lord Five Heads will definitely investigate. Just like how Scar had once mocked the young Murloc. As a brown-scale black iron expert, an outsider would never be able to squeeze into the upper echelons of the barbarian fish tribe. If not for the fact that the conditions were not met, the young Murloc would have already been sacrificed and sold off by Manjun and the others. Scar's death caused a huge commotion. In just one night, the entire city was in a storm. Manjun and the others were extremely depressed. After some discussion, they could only brace themselves and go to the Poison Arrow tribe. In the Poison Arrow fort. "Speak, did you kill that Scar?" The Poison Arrow tribe's leader slammed the table and shouted at Du Lu. Du Lu was the grandson that his grandfather loved the most. At this moment, his face was full of grievance. "Grandfather, how could I dare to kill him? At most, I just challenge him. It's not like I don't know the rules. Tell me the truth. I want to hear the truth." "I'm telling the truth." The Poison Arrow tribe's leader's tone softened. "You can't hide anything. Grandson, this is a huge matter. If you really did kill him, I will secretly cover for you. But you have to tell the truth. Grandfather, I definitely didn't kill anyone. Can't the divine imprint be checked? You could just check me directly. The Poison Arrow tribe's leader stared at his grandson Dulu. To be honest, I don't really believe that you killed him. Grandfather, I watched you grow up. No, you watched me grow up. I am very obedient. Obedient my ass. I don't believe that the reason you did it was because you weren't strong enough. You're only black iron, and Scar is also black iron, but he is a famous expert. If you want to kill him, you wouldn't have done it so easily in the barbarian fish fort. Grandfather, listen to what you were saying. While the grandfather and grandson were discussing, a Murloc guard came to report that the investigation team of the barbarian fish tribe had arrived. This group of useless barbarian fish. Someone has already killed his way into their nest, and they still have the nerve to investigate us. The Poison Arrow tribe's leader was very dissatisfied, but he still ordered to open the door. Quick, let them all in, Dulu shouted, eager to clear his name as soon as possible. The investigation result was that Dulu was not the murderer. Manjun frowned, but he also let out a sigh of relief. It was good that Dulu was not the murderer. This way, the barbarian fish tribe and the Poison Arrow tribe would not have a bigger conflict. However, just as Manjun and the rest wanted to leave the Poison Arrow fort, they were stopped by the Poison Arrow tribe's Murlocs. You can't leave. We are only here to investigate. Is there a need to be so bad? Bad. Our tribesmen are gone, and the divine imprint has been transferred. It just had to be when you came. There must be a murderer among you. The Poison Arrow fishmen were furious. What? Manjun and the shaman beside him looked at each other. Both of them were shocked. Knowing that this was a serious matter, Manjun did not resist and immediately ordered all his subordinates to put down their weapons and cooperate with the investigation. Wave after wave of spells were used to investigate, but Manjiang and the others were all innocent. Everyone from the barbarian fish tribe, please stay here for the night. Maybe the magic cannot activate the imprint, and this is the murderer's method. This time, I will personally invite the priest from the temple to investigate. The Poison Arrow tribe's leader said. Manjun's attitude was very straightforward. We will stay, but please inform my tribesmen. Also, can you let me take a look at the murder scene? The Poison Arrow tribe's leader was indifferent. You can take a look, but you have to wait until the divine imprint is done. Manjun immediately expressed his understanding. The fish god's priest arrived, but the divine imprint did not show any results. Manjun and the rest then took a look at the scene, but also did not find anything. It's like this again, not a single trace is left. I even suspect that this is a murder scene. After all, the victim is only missing, and the last place he was seen is here. Manjun and the Poison Arrow tribe's Murlocs discussed for a while, but there was no progress. Manjun wanted to leave, but the Poison Arrow tribe did not let him go. This made Manjun very angry. He originally came to investigate the poison flow, but he did not expect that his group would be detained. The Poison Arrow tribe's leader did not want to make things difficult for Manjun, but he wanted to wait for the barbarian fish tribe's leader to come and pick him up and then have a secret discussion with the other party's leader. The barbarian fish tribe's leader also understood his intention, but did not set off. Very soon, the Poison Arrow tribe received a piece of shocking news. Another murder case had happened. This time, the ones who died were the barbarian fish tribe's Murlocs. In one day, 2 black iron Murlocs died, and the same method was used. The imprint disappeared, and the murderer did not leave any trace. The news could not be concealed, and the whole CI city was shocked. Who was the murderer? What method did he use? Why were the spells and divine imprints unable to detect anything? Chapter 301. Devil. It must be the devil. It must be the undead who died unjustly in the past taking revenge. The 3 higher races must have a deep grudge and are secretly trying to assassinate each other. There were all kinds of guesses and rumors in Oceanite City, causing everyone to panic. The ones who died were either the barbarian fish tribe or the Poison Arrow tribe. Why did the White-Eyed tribe not have a single sacrifice? Naturally, more and more people in Oceanite City paid attention to this question. The White-Eyed tribe did not lose a single person, so they were very suspicious. But the White-Eyed tribe did not come out to clarify, and the leader of the White-Eyed tribe did not do anything. The only reaction came late. It was to urge the other two tribe leaders to explain the matter and clear the suspicion of the White-Eyed tribe. The leader of the White-Eyed tribe did not bother to explain himself. Instead, he made others explain, showing a strong stance. There was no other way. The previous leader of the White-Eyed tribe was still alive. She was called Fu Bai, a gold-level fisherman shaman. She was the only gold-level fisherman in Ocean Eye City, and she had a magic job. This was where the confidence of the White-Eyed tribe came from. The Poison Arrow tribe leader was the first to say, "There is currently no evidence pointing to the culprit. Please do not make wild guesses." The Barbarian Fish tribe leader said, flatteringly, "Maybe it is because Master Fu Bai is in the fort, so the culprit does not dare to commit murder in the White-Eyed tribe." Man Jiang snuck into the White-Eyed Pearl clan's nest. The fisherman Xiao Bai received him. Man Hard smiled bitterly. "Xiao Bai, my friend, I am here to ask you for help." Xiao Bai teased him. "I think you have lost a lot of weight." Xiao Bai was a female fisherman. She had very obvious characteristics of the White-Eyed tribe. Her fish eyes were white, but they were not pure white. They were flawed. There was a layer of gray in the depths of her eyes. Manhard had known Xiao Bai since a long time ago. They were close in age and grew up together. When she was young, Xiao Bai's eyes were no different from a normal fishman's. But as she grew older, her eyes became whiter and whiter, and her vision became weaker. Manhard knew that when the gray in Xiao Bai's eyes disappeared, she would lose her vision, and her eyes would become a pair of ornaments. At that time, Manhard would be happy for her. Such a situation was what the White-Eyed Fisherman dreamed of. Only geniuses whose bloodline had reached a certain level would be completely blind. At that time, the fish pearl on Xiao Bai's forehead would become transparent, and its power would increase greatly. Between the eyebrows of the White-Eyed Fishman, there was a tentacle. There was a fish pearl hanging from the front end of the tentacle. When they were born, the fish pearls were milky white. As time passed, the white in the fish pearls gradually dissipated and became transparent. When the White-Eyed Fishman's eyes turned completely white and he became blind, the fish pearl would become completely transparent and become a natural portable magic tool. At this time, the White-Eyed Fishman's mental power would grow to the peak of its life. Invisible mental power would always surround its body, replacing its eyes to observe the outside world. This was the White-Eye bloodline. The bloodline of the gold magic type was very powerful. Of course, as the other two higher races, the Poison Arrow and the Savage Fish bloodline, had reached gold level. However, as of now, they did not have any gold-ranked fighters in the world. In the past, the two clans had indeed produced gold-ranked murlocs. Compared to the human race, there were very few gold-ranked murlocs, and gold fishmen with magic types were even rarer. The White-Eye bloodline had a constantly growing magic crystal ball. The Barbarian Fish bloodline gave the user a strong physique and endurance. The Poison Arrow bloodline would constantly grow poisonous thorns, and the user would also have a space bag to store these poisonous thorns. "I've had a terrible time these 2 days." Manhard sighed. "Please help me." "Of course." Xiao Bai smiled. "I can help you as long as you can pay the price." The Murlocs immediately gave a price. Manhard was speechless. "Your price is getting higher and higher. Last time, I worked so hard to get 2/3 of the pearls in the suction nest trench." Xiao Bai said, "That was our cooperation. Without my prophecy, would you be able to find the way to attack the lobster man's nest? You have to know that the suction nest is connected in all directions, and the water flow is constantly changing. You have to go into a specific suction nest at a specific time to come out where you want to go. After the time passes and the water flow changes, you might end up dozens of nautical miles away from the same suction nest. You might even be stuck in there." Okay. Manhard raised his hand. "You're right. Hurry up and give me another prophecy. I'll agree to this price." "It's good that you understand," Xiao Bai said and started to chant. As she chanted, the fish pearl at the end of her whisker started to shine. The light became brighter and brighter. but Xiaobai looked troubled. After a long time, the fish pearl lost all its light and became transparent again. Xiaobai said dejectedly, I didn't manage to prophesy it. The white-eye murlocs had the ability to prophesy in their bloodline. This was their natural talent. Xiaobai was also a genius with high aptitude, but this time she failed. It was a complete failure. My prophecy was disrupted. The other party isn't simple. He might be a sorcerer or a shaman, or he might have magic equipment that can block prophecies, Xiaobai analyzed. Even you can't? Who can do that? Manhar was very surprised. He had always used asking Xiaobai for help as his trump card. He didn't expect it to fail this time. Xiaobai said with a trace of pride, in the entire Ocean Eye City, other than the current tribe leader and the former tribe leader, no Murloc has the ability to block my prophecy. Speaking of this, Xiaobai's expression changed slightly. You suspect our tribe? No, how can I think that? Manhard hurriedly waved his hand, but then he changed the topic. I don't think that because I trust you the most, but I don't know what the other Murlocs are thinking. Xiaobai's expression turned ugly. She felt the pressure. As long as the culprit was not caught, the White-Eye tribe would be suspected. Even if the other two tribe leaders clarified, it would still be the same. Ocean Eye City was very big, but also very small. No one in the White-Eye tribe died, but they were in Ocean Eye City and couldn't stay out of trouble. The culprit was still killing. After one night, the three tribes found that two more people went missing. Their divine spell imprints were transferred. Different from before, there were also victims in the White-Eye tribe this time. The White-Eye tribe leader, who was originally calm, was furious. He immediately invited the other two tribe leaders for an emergency discussion. The culprit is ruthless and daring. When I catch him, I will pull out his tendons and skin him alive. I will dig out his organs and feed them to my mouth. But the key is, how did he do it? We can't find out with our current methods. In my opinion, we should ask Lord Fu Bai to do something. But the White-Eye tribe leader shook his head and expressed that he was in a difficult position. Our previous tribe leader is old. It is not good for him to do something. The White-Eye tribe had their own difficulties. The previous tribe leader, Fu Bai, was indeed in poor health. Every time he did something, it would make his limited lifespan worse. In his current situation, he was no longer living for himself. The longer she lived, the more advantages the White-Eyed tribe would have, and they would be able to suppress the other two tribes. Just finding the culprit would reduce Fu Bai's lifespan. For the White-Eye tribe, it was obviously a loss and not worth it. The Poison Arrow tribe leader snorted coldly. The Barbarian Fish tribe leader was also very dissatisfied, but the two of them had no other choice. They did not have the power to force Fu Bai to do something. Such a vile thing has never happened in the Ocean Eye City. The White-Eye tribe leader comforted with an apologetic tone. Actually, it doesn't matter if we can't find the culprit for now. The culprit must have collected these divine imprints to participate in the fish god's test. When the heavenly pillar rises, do you think it will not show up? After confirming that Fu Bai would not help, the Poison Arrow tribe leader took a step back and suggested, then let's gather all the mermen with divine imprints and protect them. The Barbarian Fish tribe leader was very hesitant. The mermen who were qualified were all at the Black Iron rank. These mermen were originally experts, but because they were afraid of being assassinated, they gathered them together to protect them. Where was the face of the experts? If they were to encounter danger, they would protect these mermen, who could protect the three tribes and the weaker masses. In the future, would the three upper tribes still have the face to control the Ocean Eye City? The Poison Arrow tribe leader smiled. We can announce to the public that this is a joint training for the fish god's test this time. That is one way. However, we still have other opportunities. The White-Eye tribe leader said, we can fish. The Barbarian Fish tribe leader's eyes lit up. You're saying that we can use a merman as bait to lure the culprit to attack? The White-Eye tribe leader smiled and nodded. The next day, the young merman who had transformed into a sea loach slowly approached his target. The young merman had pearl foam in his mouth. It was because of this that the young merman's identity had not been exposed by magic or divine imprints. The target was obviously very cautious. He had noticed the sea loach approaching him. The sea loach young merman was like a frightened cat or dog. With a whoosh, he scuttled away and left his target. An ambush. Just a moment ago, when the young merman was about to make a move, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. He believed in this premonition. This premonition had been very effective on the bewildering island. Attacking a merman with a divine imprint is getting more and more dangerous. Why don't I change my target? The young merman moved again. Since the three tribes had set up a trap and used a merman with a divine imprint as bait, the attention was bound to be focused on these mermen. On the other hand, the other black iron fishmen who were active outside had much weaker defenses. The three tribes waited bitterly for a long time, but the culprit did not take the bait. Instead, they received news of the other black iron fishmen's deaths. The three tribes were both shocked and angry. How did he see through these traps? Is there a mole among us? Don't make wild guesses. The culprit is trying to sow discord. The merman who died this time did not have a divine imprint. Is his goal not just the divine imprint? If he really wants the qualifications to participate, he only needs to kill one. There's no need to kill so many. The three tribes' plan had failed. They were both angry and confused. They could only follow the plan of the Poison Arrow tribe leader. They gathered almost all the mermen with divine imprints for protection and announced to the outside world that they were training. The young merman's actions did not stop. Chapter 302. Facing Manharden's question, the young Murloc thought, "These marks are all on my body. I'm too lazy to count them." But on the surface, the young Murloc still looked excited. "Of course," Manharden nodded. "I think highly of you. But, although you are black iron and have enough cultivation, you just joined the barbarian fish tribe. You are too inexperienced." The young Murloc quickly asked, "Then what should I do?" Manharden smiled and reminded him, "You should know what Scar did at the beginning." The young Murloc looked embarrassed. "I don't have enough money," Manharden smiled. "Maybe you can ask your family and friends for help. This is a rare opportunity. There was an accident this year." The young Murloc hesitated. "Think about it." Manharden patted him on the shoulder and left. Looking at his back as he left, the young Murloc pondered, "That means that the news is true." In order to obtain more divine imprints, the three clans could only purchase them from Lord Five Heads when they couldn't track me down. It seems that the three clans paid a big price. Otherwise, they wouldn't have thought of a newcomer like me. The three clans' treasury was almost empty. This made the leaders of the three clans panic. They tried to get resources from various channels to fill the treasury. Black iron Murlocs were strong and often had a certain amount of personal wealth. The three clans collected fees at the same time. On one hand, they promoted more people to participate in the fish god test. On the other hand, they could replenish the treasury. It was killing two birds with one stone. The young Murloc, the culprit of all this, began to think, "Maybe I should explore the central temple." The young Murloc certainly wouldn't spend resources to buy divine marks from Manharden. It wasn't that he couldn't afford the resources, but if he got the divine marks publicly, if he was tested with magic, the divine marks wouldn't be revealed. In this way, the young Murloc would expose his secret of hiding the divine marks. The identity of the murderer would be obvious. Pearl foam was a good thing, but the method used by the Justice Pirates was too simple. It was far from the level of improvisation. Although the young Murloc decided to explore the temple, he didn't have a suitable opportunity. The black iron Murloc strategy of moving in pairs made it very difficult for him to move. It wasn't until 3 days later that the young Murloc had a chance to move alone at night. He transformed into a sea loach and stuck close to the sand at the bottom of the sea. He moved directly in the direction of the temple. Even if he encountered a merman along the way, he would still avoid them, showing a natural look of panic. When a Murloc left, he continued to move. In this way, he smoothly arrived in front of the temple. The temple was located in the center of the Sea Eye City. It was like an oval-shaped arena. The temple was supported by hundreds of pillars. These huge stone pillars were covered in thick moss, and some of them were even entwined with seaweed. There were no guards around the temple. Instead, the temple was constantly being monitored by magic. Once there was hostility, the alarm would be sounded. With pearl foam in his mouth, the sea loach youth smoothly passed through the stone pillar and entered the temple. There were many rooms. The young Murloc, he didn't explore these rooms. As a sea loach, it was normal for it to roam the streets, but it was strange for it to barge into a room. Just like stray cats and dogs, they could wander the streets, but they rarely broke into people's homes. In addition to this reason, the young Murloc also knew that there were many Cthulhuism followers in these rooms. Every month before the Pillar of Heaven rose, believers would come from other places to make a pilgrimage. Fivehead was in charge of receiving them and distributing the rooms to these believers. These people came from all kinds of races. There were humans, Nagas, dwarves, elves, and even lobstermen. As long as they believed in the fish god, they would be treated well. But when the Pillar of Heaven rose, these believers would face the Pillar of Heaven and pray. They would often pray continuously for more than 10 days, almost to the point of not sleeping or resting. If they were lucky enough, or if their faith was pious enough, or if they were blessed by the gods, these believers could be sucked into the Pillar of Heaven and have a chance to enter the half-plane. Most of the believers didn't come back. A few succeeded and gained a lot. Some had improved their cultivation, some had regained their youth, some had recovered from their injuries, some had obtained rare fighting skills, and some had brought back valuable treasures. These believers could feel the pilgrimage deep in the sea. They had a certain level of strength, and their faith was at least pious. In this way, the Cthulhuism followers would more or less master divine spells. Some divine spells were powerful, and some were strange and ingenious. The teen didn't want to get into trouble. He would rather deal with warriors than spellcasters of the same level. As warriors had only one method, it was easier to predict. The law enforcers had all kinds of strange methods, and if one was careless, they would suffer. So when he assassinated the people with the divine spell mark, he chose to deal with the barbarian fish tribe and the poison arrow tribe. He placed the white-eyed fishmen last. The teen didn't forget about the secret room at the bottom of the sea, so he knew that there was a necromancer and blasphemy priest hidden among the Cthulhuism followers. When he assassinated the members of the 3 races, he had another plan, which was to blame the Cthulhuism followers. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed. These Cthulhuism followers were very well behaved. After living in the room, they pretty much didn't leave. Fivehead was in charge of watching them. The merman teen also wanted to cause conflict between the 3 races. If the 3 races fought, he could take advantage of the situation. If he did it well, he could severely weaken these enemies without spending a single soldier. But he still didn't succeed. The 3 races worked closely together and were always on guard against being instigated. Their relationship was very strong. The teen also found that the fishmen in the Sea City were very different from the fishmen outside the Sea City. Their intelligence was much better. Maybe this was the benefit of believing in a god. The Sea Loach teen walked through the corridor and came to the empty space in the center of the temple. He saw the giant creature lying on the empty space at first glance. It was a sea beast that looked like a giant dragon. It had 5 snake heads and a body like a giant dragon. It had a pair of front claws and a pair of back claws. It also had a thick tail that was at least 2 meters long. Its entire body was dark green in color, and it was covered in thick and tight snake scales. It was lying on the treasures on the ground, snoring and emitting a strong gold aura. This was a gold-level sea beast. The teen wasn't surprised. These days were enough for him to find out about this 5-head lord. Its core identity wasn't a gold-level 5-headed snake, but the son of a sacred beast. Its mother was the sacred beast of the fish god. It originally lived in the temple, but in the last few decades, it had been in the half-plane and sent one of its descendants, the most powerful 5-headed snake, to the temple. The five-headed snake could communicate with the mother snake and get the divine imprint, so its status was extraordinary. But unlike the mother snake, this gold-level sea beast that was respectfully called Lord Fivehead was very greedy and liked to collect all valuable things. In the past, when the sacred beast was stationed, the divine imprint was given out for free. But when the five-headed snake came, it took the opportunity to collect money and started a business of selling imprints. Ordinary people said that giant dragons liked to collect treasures. But now, when the teen saw the treasures piled up like a mountain on the empty space of the temple, he understood. Even if one didn't have the bloodline of a giant dragon, as long as one was greedy enough, they would be obsessed with and covet treasures. To be honest, the teen had never seen so many treasures. Pearls, gold coins, silver coins, shell money, and so on were piled up like a mountain, rising and falling one after another. Crystals emitted sparkling and translucent colors. Cups, horseshoes, oil lamps, hunting guns, and all kinds of other antiques were dazzling. There were also magic tools among them. Most of them were raw materials. The shells of the lobsterman, seaweed, seabed, oars, and so on, each emitted an aura from the bronze level to the silver level. The resources at the bottom of the sea were actually very rich. Although the Murloc tribe's level of civilization wasn't high, and there weren't many powerhouses, being able to breathe and survive at the bottom of the sea was a huge advantage that humans, elves, and dwarves couldn't compare to. Taking out 1% of the raw materials was enough to cause a sensation in the human market. The teen also found many barrels of wine. Each barrel was half the height of a person, made of high-quality wood and sealed with unique craftsmanship. The wine inside was of a very high grade. They were at least of the dark iron level, and many of them were of the silver level. Some of the wine bottles even had the aura of the gold level. Some of the barrels had already fallen apart. There was still a strong smell of wine left on the broken wood of the barrels. The five-headed sea snake had obviously drunk a lot of wine. It had the ability to control water, so it was very convenient for it to drink wine at the bottom of the sea. Manjiang had once held a celebration banquet to reward the heroes who had done a great job, such as running around and pickled vegetables. At the banquet, they drank the most ordinary rum. Now, the teen found that the Murloc tribe still had good wine, and the quality was quite high. It was just that he wasn't qualified to let Manjiang serve him better wine. If a bottle of rum is sold in the Sea City, the price would be at least 3 times higher than on land. And there's a price, but no market. The wine here is a luxury. This time, in order to appease the five-headed sea snake in exchange for more divine imprints, the 3 great clans might have emptied the wine storehouse. The teen's heart suddenly moved. He didn't want to take away these treasures. It was too risky. Perhaps there were tracking divine imprints left in these treasures. What the teen thought was, if he destroyed these treasures, how would the five-headed sea snake react? What would the 3 great clans do? The five-headed sea snake will definitely suffer heavy losses and become angry out of humiliation. It will continue to blackmail the 3 great clans. It's a sea beast, its intelligence isn't high. The 3 great clans have already suffered great losses. They don't care about their faces and secretly sell divine imprints. If they're blackmailed again, they might really become poor and their wealth will be depleted. Let's do it. It wasn't difficult to destroy these treasures, because there were a lot of magic items here. Those fine wines were, in essence, magic potions. Whether it was magic items or potions, they all contained magic. It was just that because they were made with unique craftsmanship, their magic was balanced and stable. But as long as this balance was broken from the outside, the magic would become chaotic. If the chaotic magic wasn't suppressed in time, it would violently clash and possibly cause an explosion. The teen carefully approached the five-headed sea snake. After confirming that it was completely drunk, he decided to take a risk. He once again transformed into a fishman, but this time, he didn't mutate into a brown scale. Instead, he became a barbarian fish. Recently, he had killed a lot of barbarian fish and had already collected this bloodline. The poison arrow bloodline was almost done. The white-eyed fishman bloodline was also one-third complete. The barbarian fish teen was very strong. He didn't make a sound as he secretly moved the wine barrels and a large amount of fire-type ores. He tried to place these things around the five-headed sea snake. After working for a long time, he was finally able to arrange them properly. A short wall was formed around the five-headed sea snake, surrounding it in the center. During this time, the team made some noise, but the five-headed sea snake was sleeping soundly and didn't notice. The teen began to retreat. When he reached a stone pillar, he once again transformed into a dragon man. This time I'll make a big noise. The teen was nervous and excited. He held his breath and began to accumulate power. After a few breaths, a ball of flame brewed between his dragon claws. The golden red flame was extremely bright. The five-headed sea snake still didn't react, but the teen could feel that there were noises coming from the rooms around the temple. The aura of the fighting technique was very strong. Once it was used, it would definitely be exposed. Come and taste this. The teen pushed his dragon claws, and the flame suddenly shot out. Like a flaming meteor, it instantly lit up the entire temple square and crashed into the treasures beside the five-headed sea snake. Fighting technique, flame explosion. Boom. It was like a loud noise. This was the explosion of the flame explosion itself. Then, rumble. The explosion of the flame explosion destroyed most of the magic items. The magic was chaotic to the extreme and immediately caused a chain explosion. Retreat. After the teen fired the flame explosion again, he immediately transformed into a sea loach and rushed out of the temple. The Cthulhuism followers exclaimed. The lucky ones directly ran into the wall and escaped. The unlucky ones stayed behind to accompany the five-headed sea snake and were affected by the explosion. Roar! The five-headed sea snake was originally sleeping happily. It never thought that there would be a big explosion beside it. It was at the center of the explosion and suffered the most damage from the explosion. The pain hit it, and the five-headed sea snake subconsciously looked up and howled. Rumble. The chain explosion continued, but the power was reduced by a lot. The five-headed sea snake vented the pain through howling. After a few seconds, it reacted. I've been attacked. Where's the enemy? The teen had already run out of the temple. It was very smooth. He had already planned his retreat route. Then, with a loud crash, the temple collapsed. Those Cthulhuism followers who didn't escape were first blown up and then crushed to the ground by the collapsed stone houses. The number of casualties was hard to count. For a moment, the five-headed sea snake was stunned. Then, it suddenly quivered and lowered its five snake heads. It widened its snake eyes and eagerly checked its treasures. Countless coins were melted by the high temperature and melted into a pile. Those precious antiques were turned into countless pieces. The loss of magic items was the heaviest. The fragrance of good wine spread in all directions. There was also the smell of the five-headed sea snake's burnt flesh. Roar! The next moment, the five-headed sea snake was furious. It was furious. Gone, it's all gone. My treasure's my wine. Who is it? Which despicable and shameless thing actually dared to do this? Come out, I will tear you into pieces. When the teen heard the five-headed sea snake's roar, his heart trembled. He drilled into the sand at the bottom of the sea and rolled, avoiding a group of murlocs who heard the commotion and hurried over. Oh my God, what did I see? The central temple collapsed. Oh no, this time the murderer didn't kill anyone. He destroyed the temple. Sir Five-Headed Sea Snake, calm down. More and more murlocs rushed over. They didn't have time to be angry and comforted the five-headed sea snake. That murderer? You still haven't caught him? Useless trash. What's the use of keeping you? After the five-headed sea snake finished speaking, a huge snake head suddenly opened its mouth and directly swallowed a murloc. Sir, the murlocs shouted in shock. My treasure is gone. You are all guilty. You all deserve to die. The five-headed sea snake roared. One of the snake heads raised up and spat out a purple venom. The venom quickly spread on the bottom of the sea. The murlocs who were infected by the venom were poisoned to death on the spot. The evil god followers frantically escaped from the temple. Bang, bang, bang. The five-headed sea snake took large strides and walked out of the ruins of the temple. It rushed into the stone room nearby. Its huge body knocked down countless houses. Its terrifying claws left deep footprints in the ground. The five-headed sea snake's eyes were completely red. It was so angry that it directly lost its mind. P.S. This book was originally updated once a day. But this month, I took too many days off. Therefore, I added a few chapters at the end of the month to make up for the gaps. After that, the extra chapters are my apology to everyone. The updates are not stable. I'm sorry, everyone. The reason for the unstable updates is mainly because I have been revising the first volume in the month of November and adjusting the rhythm. During this period, I have also adjusted the outline and details. There are many things that are connected, and it is very hard to think about. In the middle of this month, everyone should be able to see the revised first volume. I believe that the rhythm will be more comfortable. At the same time, there will be more important content added. Please pay attention. Chapter 303. If I knew this would happen, I would have come directly to the temple. Such an effect was out of the young man's expectations. The young man was filled with joy as he quickly swam back to his original location and transformed back into his brown scales. Very quickly, he received a forceful conscription order and rushed to the battlefield with Manjiang. The three patriarchs had already rushed over and shouted to the five-headed snake, trying to communicate with it and awaken its consciousness. It was useless. The five-headed snake was a sea beast and lacked intelligence. It was greedy and fierce. Before it was ambushed by the young man, it had drunk wine and its brain was already muddled. Now that it was ambushed, its body was covered in injuries and the pain was inciting it to go crazy. What is going on? It was done by the murderer. He caused the explosion and wanted to kill Lord Five-Headed Snake. So vicious, so vicious. This murderer wants to destroy my Ocean Eye City. The three patriarchs were so angry that their bodies trembled. Bang, bang, bang. The five-headed snake took large strides and rampaged through the city. A large number of stone houses were crushed by it and fell apart like fragile toys. It opened its mouth, and some of its mouth shot out venom, some flashed with lightning, and some had steel teeth. Lord Five-Headed Snake, calm down. An evil god follower used a divine technique, and the light shone on the five-headed snake's body. In the next moment, the five-headed snake's tail swept over and directly killed this evil god follower. His corpse flew far away. Houses collapsed, and large amounts of sand flew up, covering the Ocean Eye City behind the five-headed snake. Battle technique, barbaric charge. Barbarian Fish Patriarch was wearing heavy armor and crashed into the body of the five-headed snake. The five-headed snake took a small step back, and then its head with steel teeth descended from the sky. It bit down, and the sharp teeth actually shot out sparks from the bottom of the sea. At the critical moment, Barbarian Fish Patriarch was pulled out by the current. The one who used the technique was White-Eyed Pearl Patriarch. Meanwhile, the Poison Arrow Tribe's Patriarch was wandering in the outer circle, constantly opening his mouth and spitting out poison arrows. The poison arrows pierced the body of the five-headed snake like toothpicks. The five-headed snake became even more enraged after being obstructed. It turned its main target to the three clan leaders. The three patriarchs were only at the silver level. Facing the enraged gold-level sea beast, they quickly fell into a disadvantageous position and became more and more embarrassed. The young merman followed behind Manjiang and watched the battle from afar. He was secretly speechless. The five-headed snake had suffered such a violent explosion. It was heavily injured and bleeding, but it was still able to fight so valiantly. The mother of this five-headed snake is a saint beast. Its bloodline is not simple. No matter if it's defense, recovery, or endurance, they're all terrifying. The stronger the five-headed snake was, the greater the destruction it caused, and the happier the young man was. The chiefs of the three tribes are all silver-ranked. and they can't compare to the gold-ranked five-headed serpent. Their hands and feet are obviously tied. Due to the five-headed snake's identity and backing, they can't really hurt it. As the instigator, the youth felt aggrieved on behalf of the three clan leaders. Crack! A bolt of lightning struck the poison arrow patriarch. The poison arrow patriarch was already on guard and immediately swam to the side. But who knew? The lightning suddenly changed its direction and chased after the poison arrow patriarch. Barbarian Fish and White-Eyed Pearl Patriarch quickly wanted to help, but the other four heads of the five-headed snake pounced on them. They could only keep retreating, leaving the poison arrow patriarch behind. The poison arrow patriarch was struck by the lightning. His whole body was paralyzed, and he couldn't move. He could only watch as the snake opened its mouth and swallowed him. This scene immediately caused the Murlocs to cry out in alarm. Save the patriarch! The Murlocs of the Poison Arrow tribe stepped forward and attacked the five-headed snake. The five-headed snake continuously spat out 3 mouthfuls of venom, poisoning the Murlocs of the Poison Arrow tribe. Hundreds of them died tragically. Don't be rash, White-Eyed Pearl Patriarch roared, trying his best to control the situation. However, without the Poison Arrow Patriarch, there were only 2 silver-ranked extraordinaires left. They were even less of a match for the five-headed snake. Is Ci City going to be destroyed today? Man Jiang muttered, looking at the battlefield absent-mindedly. Even he had lost his fighting spirit, let alone the other Murlocs. If it was a gold-ranked Murlocs, they might not be able to achieve such destructive power. A silver-ranked extraordinaire was not able to deal with a gold-ranked extraordinaire. The Draconian youth had defeated the Gold-Silver Hook brothers. Most importantly, it was a five-headed snake that was destroying Ci City. This kind of gold-ranked sea beast had a huge body and was very good at bullying the weak and wantonly destroying scenes. Just as Ci City was about to be destroyed, a spell descended from the sky. The water formed a tight knot and tightly bound the five-headed snake. A gold-ranked Murloc shaman floated in the sky above Ci City. It's Master Fu Bai. Master Fiveheads is under control. As expected of Master Fu Bai, the only gold-ranked spellcaster in Ci City for hundreds of years. The Murlocs were pleasantly surprised, and their morale was greatly boosted. Old Murloc Shaman Fu Bai's face became more and more unsightly. At the same time, her body was trembling slightly. Her condition was really bad. Every time she fought, she would burn her little lifespan. However, at this moment, she had no choice but to fight. Ci City was her foundation and her home. The five-headed snake roared angrily and struggled frantically. However, it was still bound on the spot and could not move. Countless gazes of respect, shock, and worship were focused on Fu Bai. In terms of size, Fu Bai was relatively small compared to the five-headed snake. However, such a small body was able to burst forth with a powerful spell and control the five-headed snake. The current clan leader, White-Eyed, immediately swam to Fu Bai's side as a guard. Fu Bai transmitted a message to him and the Barbarian Fish clan leader at the same time. I can only hold on for 10 minutes. The expressions of the two clan leaders changed drastically. 10 minutes? That was too short. According to their understanding of the five-headed snake, its anger would not subside until it caused a ruckus for a day and a half. What should we do? Asked the clergyman to act. They have the same faith as us. After the two clan leaders quickly discussed, they immediately gave the order. The surviving Cthulhuism followers acted one after another. They cast various divine spells and landed on the five-headed snake's body. However, the effects were minimal. Time passed by mercilessly. Fu Bai transmitted another message. There's only one way now. Release that person and let him subdue the five-headed snake. The expressions of the two clan leaders changed again. Barbarian Fish snorted. Are we going to ask for help from that blasphemer? This is our only chance. If he does not act, we can only abandon Ci City. Fu Bai said. Barbarian Fish could not help but fall into silence. After a few breaths of time, he agreed with an ashen expression. White-Eyed clan leader naturally followed Fu Bai's plan. As for the Poison Arrow clan, the acting clan leader agreed. Since the three clans had agreed, Xiaobai accepted the order and quickly swam back to the depths of her clan's fortress. She entered a secret prison. The prison was affected by the spell, and the seawater was emptied. It was now filled with breathable air. She entered the prison with ease and saw a human youth lying on the ground, sleeping soundly. There were wine jars scattered around the youth. His wrists and ankles were tied with anti-magic bracelets. There were chains extending from the bracelets, for thick chains were rooted in the surrounding walls. Lord Fengyao, wake up, wake up! Xiaobai shook the youth's body. Even though she was anxious, her tone and actions were as gentle as possible. The youth was shaken awake. He had an extremely handsome face and a pair of hazy, drunken eyes barely opened, revealing a star-like expression. Ah, my beautiful goddess, my true love. Xiaobai immediately felt her face heating up. Lord Fengyao, I'm not a goddess. Look carefully, I am Xiaobai. What's Miss Xiaobai? Why? Do you still want to hear me tell you stories about the sacred continent? No, this time, I need your help. Someone caused a huge explosion, and the temple collapsed. Lord Fiveheads also went crazy. Now, my great-grandmother is controlling Lord Fiveheads, but this is only temporary. Our three clans have reached an agreement, and we are willing to let you go. However, please help to wake Lord Fiveheads up. Xiaobai's tone was urgent, and she quickly explained the situation. Oh, there is such a thing? Interesting, but I don't want to leave. Feng Yao said with a smile. It is good here. There is good wine every day, and there is also amorous merman food. Most importantly, this is the closest place to my goddess. Lord, if the Ocean Eye City is destroyed, your beloved goddess will definitely be angry. Ah, that is indeed the case. Then I will have to help. Where's my musical instrument? Hurry to the battlefield. When you get there, your musical instrument will definitely be delivered. Saying this, Xiaobai used a spell to release the human youth Feng Yao's shackles. Feng Yao regained his freedom. He flung his long hair and looked at the prison with nostalgia before leaving with Xiaobai with a smile. Chapter 304. Blue lightning struck everywhere, and the stone houses were blasted into smithereens by the lightning. The electricity spread across the seabed. Even though there were a lot of impurities in the seawater, the fishmen near the lightning or the evil god followers who could not escape in time all suffered. Some were directly cooked by the electricity and became roasted fishmen, while others were numb and temporarily lost the ability to move. They could only watch as the mountain-like snake body rolled over them. The five-headed snake was still bound in place, but one of its snake heads struggled and found an opportunity. It opened its mouth wide and continuously shot out lightning and thunder liquid. Fu Bai, who was binding it, trembled more and more violently. She had originally estimated that she could bind the five-headed snake for 10 minutes, but the five-headed snake's madness and strength greatly reduced the time limit of 10 minutes. Blood flowed out from the corner of Fu Bai's eyes, and the fish pearl on her forehead had an almost undetectable crack. The aura of the previous leader of the Byakugan clan began to fall rapidly. The five-headed snake roared angrily, and another snake head regained its freedom. This snake head was full of steel teeth, and it fiercely shot out and attacked with anger. With a crack, the five-headed snake did not bite Fu Bai. Although Fu Bai could not move, when she attacked, she deliberately increased the casting distance between her and the five-headed snake to the maximum. The five-headed snake was bound in place, and even if it stretched its neck, it was far from being able to hook Fu Bai. Lord Fu Bai, that was close. The surrounding fishmen exclaimed. Fu Bai's safety was related to the survival of the entire Sea City. What a pity. The young fishmen felt regretful. If Fu Bai was killed, the Sea City would be reduced to ruins today. This was the best outcome for the Justice Pirates. In the next moment, another change occurred. The five-headed snake's steel-toothed snake head crazily swayed left and right, and its thick and long snake neck actually created illusions. Then, amidst the terrified screams of the crowd, The five-headed snake's steel-toothed snake head actually left the five-headed snake's body with one of its snake necks. This was the five-headed snake's innate ability, a strange spell that was similar to the separation of flesh and blood. The five-headed snake suddenly became a four-headed snake, and its golden aura fell sharply, but it was still bound in place. However, the steel-toothed doppelganger that left its body was like a dark green kelp, and it violently swam toward Fubai. "Block it! Protect Lord Fubai!" For a moment, the Murlocs cried out in surprise. Their hearts jumped to their throats. Patriarch Barbarian Fish was the first to step forward. He gathered all his fighting aura and stood in front of Steel-Tooth's avatar. "Come." "Lord Five Heads, this is just one of your clones. It only has a silver aura. There's no reason why I can't block it." Bang! The Barbarian Fish Patriarch, who had used all his strength, was sent flying like a ball. Although the Steel Teeth avatar had fallen to the silver rank, its terrifying physique was still able to crush the Barbarian Fish Clan leader. Although they were at the same cultivation level, they were from different races and had different bloodlines, so there was a huge difference in their combat strength. However, Patriarch Barbarian Fish did contribute. After sending him flying, the Steel Tooth avatar's speed was greatly reduced, and its might was also reduced by half. The current leader of the White-Eyed clan hurriedly seized this opportunity to cast a spell. Ripples constantly appeared around the Steel Tooth doppelganger, greatly interfering with its progress and affecting the mana circulation in its body. The Steel Tooth avatar roared. After being obstructed for a moment, it still broke through the layers of spell ripples. It fiercely swung its snake tail, creating a torrent of water. The White-Eyed clan leader's spell was broken, and he immediately suffered a backlash. Just as he was about to dodge, the torrent of water had already slammed into him. The White-Eyed clan leader was immediately sent flying. Along the way, he crashed into several stone houses and plowed a long gully in the seabed before stopping. Along the way, the White-Eyed clan leader spat out blood. The White-Eyed clan leader's eyes turned black, and for a moment, he was unable to get up. Without the final obstacle, the Steel-Tooth doppelganger finally arrived in front of Floating White. Ocean Eye City is finished. Countless fishmen held their heads, their faces filled with shock and fear. Ocean Eye City is finished. The young fishman was overjoyed. However, in the next moment, a green radiance suddenly bloomed in front of the Steel-Tooth doppelganger, like a blooming flower. The Steel-Tooth doppelganger plunged into the green radiance and was about to pierce through it. At this moment, music rang out, and the green radiance violently contracted, forming a spherical cage, trapping the Steel-Tooth doppelganger inside. The Steel-Tooth doppelganger struggled crazily, twisting its huge body and causing the green spherical cage to distort violently. It was like a balloon that was about to be punctured. The music continued, and the volume was getting louder and louder. The green sphere of light was constantly reinforced and gradually stabilized. Under everyone's gazes, a human youth and Xia Bai arrived above Ocean Eye City together. Countless questions arose in the hearts of the fishmen, but seeing Xia Bai, the prodigy fishman, standing beside the human youth, and the human youth was the one who trapped the Steel-Tooth doppelganger. Therefore, the fishmen of Ocean Eye City all regarded this human as an ally. Is he also a follower of the evil god? A gold-level traveling poet, a saint-level musical instrument. The long-haired youth held a pocket-sized harp in his arms, and his slender fingers elegantly plucked the strings. The more the Steel-Tooth doppelganger struggled, the weaker it became. The young fishman's pupils shrank slightly. He was also curious about this human youth who had suddenly appeared. Moreover, he keenly sensed that the human youth's aura was different. Although it's a gold-level aura, it's even stronger than a pinnacle gold-level aura. What's going on? It's him. Man Jiang was shocked. The existence of a human youth was not a small secret among the higher-ups of the three tribes, but Man Jiang knew about it. You're finally here. Be careful. The previous tribe leader, Fu Bai, was already at the end of her rope. After reminding the human youth, she completely canceled her spell. Without the spell's restraint, the five-headed snake's main body finally broke free. The four gigantic heads raised their heads and roared. It once again cast a similar spell on the spot, and its entire body completely disintegrated. After a few breaths, it separated into four huge snakes. The huge snakes all charged toward the human youth. "Stop them!" the barbarian fish tribe leader shouted. "Everyone attack!" He led the charge and collided with one of the huge snakes, and they were evenly matched. After separating, the four huge snakes, like the steel-toothed doppelganger, were all silver level. After receiving the order from the barbarian fish tribe leader, Man Jiang attacked. He had not participated in the battle before because the barbarian fish tribe leader had instructed him to watch from the sidelines. Firstly, the strongest equipment in the barbarian fish tribe was with the barbarian fish tribe leader, so it was very difficult for Man Jiang to deal with a five-headed snake. Secondly, Man Jiang's existence was very important. He was the hope of the next generation of the barbarian fish tribe, and he was responsible for the rise and fall of the entire tribe. When the barbarian fish tribe leader was in danger, Man Jiang had to protect himself and plan for the tribe. Man Jiang rushed to the front line, but he was still cautious. His usual boldness and ferocity were all gone. He had no choice. Although his physique was far superior to the other merfolk, he was still at the bottom when compared to the silver-level snake doppelganger. Man Jiang could only try his best to restrain it. 3 of the four-headed snake doppelganger were restrained, and only one of them was left to attack the human youth. The human youth was calm and composed, and he used a spell to block it. The sea snake doppelganger did not help, and it became even more furious. It spat out lightning, poison, frost, and so on. All kinds of large-scale attacks wreaked havoc in the Sea City. For a time, the merfolk residents fled in all directions, and there were heavy casualties. The Sea City was in chaos. The White-Eyed tribe leader was using all his strength to restrain a sea snake doppelganger when an attack suddenly came from behind. The White-Eyed tribe leader was caught off guard, and he was killed by the sneak attack. The young merfolk's battle technique fluctuation could not be hidden from the others. The White-Eyed tribe leader's scream before he died attracted the attention of many merfolk. "Murderer! The murderer has appeared! He killed the White-Eyed tribe leader. Ah, my fish god, the White-Eyed tribe leader is dead. Catch him, kill him. How can this be? He is a barbarian fish tribe leader." Before the young merfolk made his move, he secretly changed into a barbarian fish tribe leader. This way, his silver battle chi did not seem out of place. The White-Eyed tribe leader was a silver-level mage, and he was very useful. With his death, the merfolk were on the verge of collapse. The four-headed sea serpent avatar charged toward the human youth again. "Time to go." The young merfolk swam with all his strength. He was originally near the city gate, and he immediately left the Sea City. "Don't let him go." He heard many merfolk shouting. "Barbarian fish tribe, you have to give the entire Sea City an explanation. That is not a member of our tribe. It is very likely that he is an outsider. Catch him, and the truth will be revealed." But how? The five-headed snake was still rioting. Should they catch the murderer, or should they suppress the five-headed snake and protect the Sea City? The merfolk were caught in a dilemma. In the end, it was Fu Bai who shouted, "Don't chase him. This blood feud will definitely be repaid in the future. But if we don't protect our home now, what future do we have?" Thus, the enraged merfolk focused their firepower on the four-headed snake doppelganger once again. Rumble, lightning flashed, and poison spread. The Sea City seemed to be groaning in the midst of the intense battle, and the culprit had already left. Chapter 305. In the deep sea, the young Murloc was swimming with all his might. The Sea City behind him was getting smaller and smaller, and in front of him was a large mass of darkness. Only the Murlocs had a large number of shimmering corals, and in most of the depths of the sea, there was no light at all. "It seems that they didn't choose to chase me." The young Murloc relaxed slightly. This result was also within his expectations. He didn't act rashly, but after careful consideration. First of all, the situation in the CI city was worrying, and because of the unexpected appearance of the second gold-rank powerhouse, the Murlocs had a slight advantage. In this case, if the young Murloc didn't act, he would definitely sit back and watch the Murlocs win, allowing the situation to stabilize. This was something the young Murloc didn't want to see, because he couldn't stay in the CI city and continue to carry out assassinations. First of all, there were fewer and fewer valuable assassination targets. He had killed a lot before, and this time, the five-headed snake made a mess in the CI city, and many died. Second of all, he didn't have much time left. The Pillar of Heaven's sea was about to erupt again, and he needed to return to the Justice Pirates in time to take charge of the situation. Therefore, he needed to act in public and kill the strongest Murlocs to weaken the Murlocs and change the situation. Secondly, he chose the leader of the Byakugan tribe after much consideration. This choice was reasonable. The young Murloc didn't want to take the risk of assassinating two gold-rank powerhouses. He had fought with Shinzo and Golden Hook, and the results were 1 loss and 1 victory respectively. The young Murloc knew the power of a gold-rank transcendent. Although Fu Bai was weak, if he really wanted to assassinate her, he wouldn't be able to succeed in 1 strike, and he might even be restrained by her. As for the human youth who was in good condition and had a strange aura, he didn't even need to think about it. I'm afraid I won't have a second chance to act after this. With this understanding, the young Murloc didn't want to kill 1 or 2 black iron rank powerhouses and waste his last chance. Although Manharden was a silver rank, his strength was at the bottom of all the silver rank Murlocs. Xiaobai was the rising star of the Byakugan tribe, and she had a lot of potential, but that was only tomorrow, not today. After comprehensive consideration and careful choice, the young Murloc targeted the leader of the Byakugan tribe. He was a silver rank Murloc and a mage. In the future, the Justice Pirates will attack Pillars of Heaven. If he is still alive, he will definitely bring a lot of threats. Another point was that the leader of the White-Eyed tribe was further away from the other fishmen and was the closest to the Chang Gate. The youth made his move. Dealing with a spellcaster of the same cultivation level was still risky, but the risk was far less than the reward, so it was worth the risk. The actual assassination went very smoothly. The White-Eyed Patriarch's attention was focused on the clown sea serpent's clone. Perhaps he had never thought that the murderer who had been hiding would be so bold as to openly assassinate him. After the successful assassination, the youth left his body and ran away, not even looking at the magic equipment on his body. His corpse contained the bloodline of a silver-ranked mage Murloc, and the young man threw it away. He wouldn't casually use his blood core. The secret of the blood core must not be exposed. He wouldn't use it in any risky situation that might expose the secret of the blood core. I hope that I can kill the chief of the White-Eyed clan and cause the merfolk to lose a great general. They won't be able to defeat the five-headed snake, and the Oceanized City will be destroyed. The young man looked forward to it. This was the best outcome. However, he also knew that the possibility of this happening was relatively small. After all, although the five-headed snake was a gold-ranked sea beast, it had lost all rationality due to its anger. When it left, it created 5 silver-ranked clones. This was actually quite a foolish action. On the other hand, Fu Bai still had the ability to forcefully attack the merfolk, and that human youth was even more unfathomable. To be able to wield a saint-ranked harp, his background was definitely not simple. When I return to the ship, maybe I can contact the Empire and investigate his identity. The youth thought. The Empire's intelligence network was still very powerful. The surroundings fell into complete darkness. It was very quiet. The seawater was very cold, and the water temperature in the Oceanized City was generally higher than in the Dark Sea region. But as a barbarian fish, the youth was still very used to it. His state of mind also gradually calmed down. He was about to return to the Justice. Suddenly, the fluctuation of a spell came from behind the youth. The merfolk youth turned around to look, and his eyes immediately widened. There was a pursuer behind him, and it was actually the human youth. Oh no, how'd he catch up? The merfolk youth hurriedly swam at full speed. The human youth did not give up, and at the same time, he used a spell to transmit his voice. You can't escape. Stop and accept your death. The merfolk youth swam even faster. Immediately, he realized, at this very moment, he was swimming at full speed and still could not catch up to the human youth's speed. In terms of endurance, I will be the final winner. But this guy is a gold ranked, and he is consuming his magic power to chase after me. In about 5 minutes, he'll catch up to me. Strange, how do you track me? I have the pearl foam to cover me. The merfolk youth quickly assessed the strength of both sides. He was in perfect condition, but his cultivation was only at the silver ranked. His opponent was a gold ranked expert, and he had consumed some of his energy when fighting the five-headed snake. But he also had a saint-ranked instrument. What the youth was most wary of was the human youth's aura, which was unbelievably vigorous. Why did he leave the oceanized city? Could it be that the five-headed snake was quickly suppressed? The difference between the two sides was still very obvious. Previously, the youth did not deal with Golden Hook alone. Moreover, Golden Hook was still injured at that time. But unless it was absolutely necessary, the youth did not want to borrow the strength of his companions. Because this way, the secret of him mutating into a merfolk would be exposed. Furthermore, it would increase the possibility of his blood core being exposed. He just fought. How much energy did he consume? If possible, it would be best to get rid of him directly. Thus, the merfolk youth clenched his teeth and turned back to fight the human youth. He opened his mouth, and several fish bones shot out from his mouth. The tips of these fish bones were all black-purple and were highly poisonous. The human youth's pupils shrank, and he quickly dodged. What is this? Are you a barbarian or a poison arrow merfolk? The human youth was surprised. The merfolk youth's appearance was that of a barbarian, but the poisonous fish bones that shot out just now were the poison arrow merfolk specialty. The youth had killed many poison arrow merfolk, and although he could not completely mutate, he could already mutate the most essential body structure. At this moment, the youth not only had the strong physique of a barbarian, but also the space pouch of a poison arrow merfolk, as well as its ability to shoot poisonous fish bones. Once this poison took effect, it would usually cause silver superhumans to lose their ability to fight, and they would be heavily injured and on the brink of death. But the human youth was agile, even more agile than a merfolk, and he managed to dodge the poisonous fish bones. The merfolk youth took the opportunity to dive down and swim into a deep and dark trench. The human youth knew that things were bad. The trench's terrain was complicated, and it was dark without any light. It would be a huge problem for him to chase after him. He quickly rushed in. The next moment, the barbarian youth, who had been lying in ambush and had not swam away, suddenly rushed out. The black iron scimitar slashed out fiercely, and it was extremely fast. Fighting technique, red scale flurry. The human youth did not have time to cast his technique, and in his haste, he could only use the harp in his hands to block the attack. The black iron scimitar struck the harp, and a sonorous sound rang out. Balls of pure white light rippled out. The pocket-sized harp was a saint-level musical instrument, and the quality of its material was very high. It completely blocked the barbarian youth's scimitar. The barbarian youth was not discouraged, and he continued to attack fiercely. The scimitar danced faster and faster. It was so fast that it left behind afterimages, and the silver-white light of fighting energy flowed out. What a fierce scimitar! The human youth's heart trembled. The barbarian youth's scimitar technique and silver-white fighting energy combined made him unable to retaliate for a while. The pocket-sized harp was not a proper weapon or defensive tool. It was only so big and could be held up with one hand. The barbarian youth's scimitar passed through the harp and landed on the human youth's body. Wounds quickly appeared on the human youth's body, and blood quickly spread out in the sea. Boom! The human youth, who had been tightly entangled, finally cast his technique. An invisible force spread out in all directions with him at the center of the sphere. The force was very strong, and the barbarian youth was unable to resist it. He was forcefully pushed away. The human youth panted heavily. His body was covered in scimitar wounds, and he was in a sorry state. He glared fiercely at the youth. "Good job. Suppressing the five-headed snake was nothing, but you caused me such heavy injuries. You're much more dangerous than that stupid snake. Now die." He held the harp with one hand, and the fingers of the other moved rhythmically, stroking the strings. Spells burst forth with the sound of the harp, and the barbarian youth retreated without hesitation. Spells bombarded him one after another. The barbarian youth was extremely agile. He scurried around in the trench, widening the distance between them again. "This murloc is so sneaky." The human youth widened his eyes in surprise. He had thought that the murlocs in CI City should be the most intelligent murlocs in the world. He did not expect this unknown murloc, who was very likely an outsider, to be so slippery. From the beginning, the young murloc had decisively retreated when he discovered that the human youth was chasing after him. After diving into the trench, he had actually set up an ambush and launched a sneak attack. The outcome of the battle was great, but he did not linger. Instead, he decisively fled. Under the bombardment of spells, he was very calm. He displayed insight that made the human youth gasp in amazement and suffered minimal injuries. He also took the opportunity to widen the distance between them. If the human youth wanted to cast a spell to attack, he would have to stop on the spot. If he wanted to chase after him, his spells would be greatly reduced. He could also cast spells while moving, but he was under the sea, so he was very limited. He had to maintain 2 spells at all times. One was to resist the water pressure, and the other was to ensure that he could breathe. In this way, his spirit and magic power were constantly being consumed. Coupled with the fact that he was moving, it wasn't him who was swimming, but another spell. On top of maintaining 3 spells, it would be much more difficult for him to cast them all on the ground. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.